Good morning, everybody.
I'm just getting away
Oh, he
from
wants
the,
me to use the microphone.
from the
And I'm used to just yelling. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Timothy Foose. I'm the Director of Public Works and Capital Projects for the city. We're really thrilled to have everybody here for our second installment of HOA operation, I guess, HOA Knowledge Series. So this is my first time I'm having a speaking role. Last one I was technical in the back, just waiting to be asked a question. I think I got asked one question the whole day, but it was still worth being here. On my right is Brady Ortego, and he's going to be basically our main presenter today. We have a lot of staff members here that will be participating as part of this project. As you can see, we have a bunch of things we're going to be covering here, everything from Neighborhood Watch, city versus HOA responsibilities, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions on that one. See, Click, Fix. Most people here know what that is, but if you don't, you're going to have a better understanding of that when we're done. And we're going to talk about social media and newsletters, because I know that is an area where things can go south quickly if we're not careful with them. I heard you speak that time about what not to do, and how you can get in trouble real quickly. Before we get started, we do have one of our council members here right now. Mr. Mahoney's here. Mr. Mahoney's sitting right up in the front here, Robert Mahoney. In the back, I'm going to introduce some of our staff members. I'm not going to try to introduce everybody, but we have our brand new Chief of Police here, Andres.
Hello, good morning, everyone. I think I should everybody's name. Thank you for being here.
Chief Andres has been with us now 3 weeks?
No, 2 weeks, 11 days.
Could be 3 months if it's counting dog years, but yes. Also in the back, we have Lieutenant Wells with us. We have one of our officers, or I guess public liaison, Rick Morellis. We have our IT guru here today as well, and we have code compliance visiting with us today. Again, we're really thrilled that you're here. Just a reminder, a couple housekeeping things. One, this is being recorded, so we can post it online afterwards, so it's a knowledge series, so people can come afterwards and see this. So it's important that if you have a question, we get an opportunity for you to speak up. Or do we have a portable mic? I think we had a portable mic last time.
if we don't have a portable mic, I'll just make sure and restate the question into the mic so that,
This way, whoever's online, whoever watches this later online knows what your question was and just doesn't hear an answer out of the blue. Additionally, over here on our right-hand side, or on your left-hand side in the corner, is men's room and ladies' room, and we do have some water and snacks on the table in the back here if you'd like something like that as the day goes on. There will be lunch served at approximately 11:30, 11:45-ish, depending on how the schedule is working out. We'll provide you with the lunch. Anybody have any questions before we get started? Oh, we have another council member just walked in. Councilwoman Katie Cunningham has just entered the room. Ms. Cunningham, how are you today? All right, any questions? Outstanding. Then I guess we're going to get started. I'm going to turn it over to Brady to get started.
okay?
But I'm not going anywhere. I think I'm up first.
Make sure my clicker works.
I guess one other point, the schedule that we had up there, due to availability of one of the presenters, item 1, which was reference to the flock system, is actually going to move down. They're not available till after lunchtime, so we're going to move them to the bottom of the agenda at this point in time, and we're going to pick up with item 2.
Okay, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to, on a Saturday, no doubt, to spend with us and educate yourselves. I see some familiar faces in terms of who was here the last or our first installment of the HOA Knowledge Series. I see some new faces. I definitely want to say thank you to the City of Cibolo for giving me the opportunity to present to you this morning. Definitely big thanks to the IT department for making the tech part of this easy. And certainly thank the school for giving us an air-conditioned spot with some cushioned chairs for you all to enjoy today's content. I'll cover a little bit of my credentials. I'm not going to go over all the logos that you see. Lawyers love certifications and logos. Probably an easy way to make fun of us for that, but I think it's most important to note that I am board certified in 2 areas of the law, one of them being residential real estate, the other area being property owners association law, HOA law or condo law. Texas is one of the few states in our country that has recognized a board certification for HOA or condo law, and I'm very proud to be part of the inaugural class. Give you an idea of the significance of those certifications. If we focus on Bexar County, there's only 3 lawyers in Bexar County that have both of those board certifications. Proud to be one of those 3. And then also I'll call attention to the College of Community Association Lawyers. I am a fellow of that organization. It's a nationwide organization, basically made up of less than 200 lawyers across the country that specialize in HOA representation. Basically, you have to demonstrate long and extensive experience in the industry to become a fellow. There's only 5 fellows in Texas. I'm one of them, and my colleague Leah Burton is also. So very, very glad to be fellows of that organization, which is a good prompt or segue into talking about CAI, Community Associations Institute. Jesus Asanzo was here last time. His daughter has a volleyball game this morning, so he won't be here to present CAI. So I'll do the best I can, but I'm glad to have a former board member and fellow education committee member back there. Wave to everybody, Dawn. So if you see Dawn during one of the breaks and you want to learn more about CAI as an organization, please reach out to Dawn or talk to Dawn. You can speak with me. I'm a board member on our San Antonio chapter of CAI, also chair of the education committee or co-chair it, and then I'm also chair of the legislative committee. So enough about me. What we have for you in our first installment is what we're calling City HOA Responsibilities. And this idea really came from the City of Cibolo. I think their phone was ringing from HOA residents asking about problems that could be solved by the city that were probably really truly HOA responsibilities. And I can speak on the HOA side of things that sometimes the HOA's phone rings and owners ask questions about things that are actually really in the city's area of responsibility. So the goal with this segment is to help you figure out where you can go to find out, okay, is this the city's responsibility or should I be speaking with my HOA? Average citizens don't always know where that line of distinction is, and hopefully this morning we can help draw that line for you. The most common points of confusion: open area maintenance. Who's mowing this grass? Who's mowing this green belt? Who's taking care of this esplanade? Is this the HOA's or is this the city's responsibility? Drainage areas. That's almost every time it rains, every time there's a significant amount of rain, there's almost always someone that contacts the HOA. I'm sure it happens with the city. I'm seeing a head nod over here.
You betcha.
You know, that ditch filled up pretty quickly. There's some trees in it. There's some debris in it. There's some trash in it. Who's going to clean this thing out, this drainage area out? Because I'm worried about my yard flooding. Also, detention and retention ponds. Those almost are part and parcel with subdivisions these days. If you're in a subdivision of any significant size, there's probably some kind of drainage component that comes with that subdivision, whether it's just drainage ditches or it could actually be some type of pond. and there's often a lot of confusion as to who maintains those ponds, who's responsible to keep them free of silt and sediment. That's what happens in these ponds over time, free of trees, and there's certainly probably some TCEQ regulations that come with maintenance of those ponds. Parking, parking on the street. It's a big one in HOAs in general. Probably one of the top 3 topics that are asked about. Dawn, would you agree, at annual meetings? What are we going to do about all these cars that are parking in the streets? We'll kind of help you figure out where the answer to that question resides. Also, traffic violations. I hear about that one a lot. People are speeding through our neighborhood. It's only a matter of time before someone gets hurt. Probably both true. But who's responsible for those speeders? And then finally, security, safety, crime. What is the HOA going to do about the potential crime in our neighborhood? I'm going to help you understand how much of that, actually almost all of it, gets shifted over to law enforcement and city responsibilities. So open area maintenance, and please jump in as you see fit, Mr. Foose. Where I always point my HOA clients to my board members and even the residents of my community go all the way back to the plats. For those that were here with at the first Knowledge Series event, you may recall my discussion or description of the plat. It takes raw acreage and actually turns it into a subdivision. Creates the lots, creates the right-of-ways, the drainage areas, the easements, the detention ponds, identifies common areas. And the reason it's significant to go to the plat is that's usually where the responsibility of certain area is designated. So
That's correct. In our community, if you're looking at a plat and your subdevelopment was put together, assembled from large lots of land, after about 2003 or 2004, the city kind of changed how it did its requirements with these documents to ensure that there was a delineation of who is responsible for what. I know that Ivory and I have gone over the ones in Benwood Ranch multiple times because there's kind of a hodgepodge of what happens, or in Deer Creek, there's a hodgepodge of what happens because there's a certain section that was earlier than that and it's not as clearly defined as the later sections. So when you look at your plat, it's kind of easy to see if you know what to look for. So anytime you see the word easement, that means that the HOA, the owner of that property, is granting someone else access to do something in that area. That's normally how an easements work. When you look at an easement, that means that somebody owns it and you've granted someone else the opportunity to be in there, whether it's for electric, overhead, or in the ground, water lines, sewer lines, or drainage. That means that the ownership, when it's an easement, is retained by the owner. So that means the owner has the responsibility to maintain it. If it's called out as a right-of-way, that means that basically that piece of property has usually been transferred to the city because the city really is the only person that can have a right-of-way. That's how the law kind of works that way. So on most of the plats, when you look at it, if there's a question, do we maintain that area? If you look on there, it'll either be called out as a drainage easement, or it may be called out on the newer plats as a 900 lot, where you'll see like 901, 902, 903. That indicates that it was platted as a lot of the subdevelopment owned by the homeowners association. It is not owned by the city. It just delineates an area. It might just be a small strip of grass that runs along one of the roadways. It may be a small strip of grass that runs behind homes that abuts another subdevelopment. So when you look at those plats, a tremendous amount of information is there. You just need to know what you are looking for and how to interpret what's there. On all of the plats done in this city since approximately 2008 or 2009, there will be a note on that plat, because there's always a list of notes. It's literally, it's the list of who's responsible for what. Mm-hmm. There's a note, and on there, normally like note 13, 14, or 15, it will say that the maintenance and upkeep for the following areas are the responsibility of the owner, the homeowners association, in that kind of a time frame. And they're worded differently from different engineering firms as they've been provided, but it's basically the same note over and over again. That tells you that area is maintained by the HOA or whoever's responsible. Sometimes it's just the homeowner has a small strip of land, it's within his fence line that he's, responsible for maintaining. When we talk about, you mentioned detention ponds, we don't, this city has not really used a retention program where we hold the water back, hoping for just evaporation to cure it. Because in this area here, normally when we get a rain, they're so big, we can't just hold all that water. We have to bring the water in and continue to discharge it at a fixed rate. So that is part of what the plat does. All of the detention ponds in this community, all, are owned by the homeowners associations. The city doesn't own any detention ponds unless it's on city-owned property. Now, we have a couple detention ponds that the city owns, but they're owned by the HOA. Yes, ma'am?
What do you call those irrigation things that are square, they're cement, they're huge, and they're used for water runoff?
Drainage inlets.
It's called drainage inlet. Who owns those?
Depends where it's located.
Okay.
If it's located along a roadway, it'll be mine, the city's.
HOA property, who maintains it?
HOA.
And if the cement starts to fail on the drainage inlets, who maintains that?
The HOA would need to have your, assume that you may have either on retainer or a relationship with an engineering firm or an engineer that might live in your neighborhood who could help steer you in that direction. But if that structure is within an HOA area, it's owned by the HOA. So in some of the subdevelopments, I'll take Turning, anybody here from Turning Stone? Sorry. In Turning Stone, they have there's a bunch of drainage channels that run through the subdevelopment that bring all the stormwater to a detention pond. And in those drainage areas where the water runs, predominantly when there's a corner and the water is basically having to make a 90-degree corner, there's normally concrete reinforcement there. And that is because as water speeds up and slows down as it makes a corner, it becomes very erosion prone. It'll just gnaw through the dirt because it wants to keep going straight. It does not wish to make a corner. That's why concrete is normally shown there. And it's not, usually can be on the inboard side and the outboard side, because as water slows down, it'll cause an eddy. It'll do the exact same thing as on the high-speed side as it goes around the long way. All of those areas are maintained by the HOA. There are a few areas, like in Turning Stone, where there is a drainage way that comes through. It's listed as a right-of-way, where all the water from Foxbrook and Turning Stone and above that runs through that development. And by agreement, after 10 years, when the plat was recorded, after 10 years, that area becomes the maintenance responsibility of the city. So this December, that main area that runs through that area that runs through becomes my responsibility. My team, my drainage team will maintain that. Anybody else have any questions related to that? Because this is the one area where we get a lot of questions. People call up and say, I don't understand why this isn't being mowed. And when we explain, you need to reach out to your HOA rep, that basically that area is maintained by the HOA. They become, well, the HOA told us it's a city's problem. And I'm said, we can refer back to the plat. We do that frequently. We actually take an image of the plat and send it to the person saying, it says right in here, you know, it's owned by the homeowners association. And they're like, okay, I'm calling them back. And that's normally what we have to do.
What I see as probably the most practical challenge for most people is you don't have the plats, or you don't know where to get the plats. You may have the declaration, you may have your bylaws, you may have the rules and regulations, but it's almost always missing from your closing packet, the plats. And so probably should help them understand where they can get the plats.
We have
easily.
those electronically. So basically, we've taken all the plats. They've been all scanned in and made electronically available. All the plats since like 2003, 2002 are all available electronically. And we've been in the process of taking the older ones from the 70s and 80s and 90s and scanning the older versions of those in and also making those available electronically. On our website, you can actually go on the website. There's a thing called FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. You can make a request. You can just fill that request out, say I'd like a copy of the plat for my subdevelopment, and we'd be happy to send it to you. It goes through the city secretary's office. She sends that out. They have a clerk that handles those requests, sends it to the responsible parties. We work on getting the data assembled, we put it in there, and we send it back to you. If you ask for an electronic copy, there's really no charge on a simple thing like sending you over a 2 or 3 page document. If you ask for a 1,500-page document, there may be a cost associated with accumulating all that, but plats are normally no more than like 2 or 3 or 4 pages. Before we move away from that, if I could say one thing about drainage areas, it is common in this community for an HOA to have an off-site continuing drainage easement they are responsible for. I can tell you Saratoga has an off-site drainage easement they're responsible for that basically goes outside the confines of the subdevelopment, and it goes through private property. And when they acquired that from that property owner, it says right on there that this is an area we will maintain. Turning Stone has the exact same thing. If you're driving down Green Valley Road, going towards 1103, you go just past the school, there's a detention pond on your left-hand side right there, just before you get to the pick and pack and everything on the corner. There's a large set of box culverts that go underneath that road, and it goes into another drainage feature that cuts through someone's property. That is also called out as an off-site drainage easement that the HOA is responsible for maintaining. That means if there's erosion, they have to maintain the erosion. If there's mowing, it needs to be mowed. There's one other thing to say about detention ponds, and this normally catches HOAs off guard. They require maintenance. Brady mentioned that. They are not just a one and done, they're there, they're fine. The effectiveness of a detention pond is based on its capacity to hold a certain volume of water and discharge it at a certain rate so you don't flood everybody downstream. Over time, naturally occurring, silt will build up in your detention pond. And when that happens, the capacity of that detention pond goes down. And when that happens, basically the potential for flooding someone downstream can go up. And if it can be proven, if a bad event happens and someone downstream is affected because someone upstream isn't maintaining their structures, there's always the potential for a litigious situation and deferred responsibility to somebody else. If you flood someone else and it's your fault, you can be held responsible. So it's important to understand that these detention ponds are normally just a big open grassy area. They normally have some sort of a concrete structure that allows the water out at a given rate based on the capacity inside there. But if you're not maintaining them, that can be a challenge downstream. If we have a major rain event like we had in the late 90s, 1998, people lived here a long time, I remember that one. We had a 1% event, a 100-year storm happened, and within 36 hours we had a second 100-year event happen right on top of it. Well, the town was already flooded when the first one ended. The second one started, and it just went from bad to horribly bad. I didn't work here at that point in time, but I've seen the pictures from the fire department and other people where there was 2 and 3 foot of standing water around a bunch of houses in the middle section of town, and it took more than a week for the water to go down because it really had nowhere to go. Because when you get 20 inches of rain in a 3 or 4 day period, everybody got 20 inches of rain, so it's got to slowly move on, and it takes time. You had a question, sir?
Yes, sir. So we've kind of had this question come up here recently, and does Guadalupe CAD maintain those plats as well as far as?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, all of the plats are legally recorded with Guadalupe County. So if you don't want to come to the city, you can always go to the county, get a copy of the plat as well.
Will those notes you referred to
Yes.
be there? Okay.
They're actually part of the physical document. They'll normally be up in either the left-hand corner or the bottom left-hand corner. There'll be a series of notes that reference exactly what's being shown on the plat.
Okay. You said the 900s were basically.
In the newer subdevelopments, a 900 lot just indicates a lot that's owned by the HOA that may not be an easement or a drainage area. It might just be a green belt. A lot of the newer subdevelopments may have a wider grass area along the side of homes on a road, so the house isn't right against the road. Those are normally listed as 900 lots. Those are the responsibility of the HOA.
Yeah, I live in Saratoga, so I'm kind of curious about this, but I won't stop the meeting here about this other thing you talked about just a second ago.
I'll be happy to visit with you. I brought my laptop. I can log in. I can pull up your plat first break if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
On your ponds, do you know offhand if
ma'am, Willow Point has a detention pond up, depends on which side. So if you're on the east side of Willow Point, there is a detention pond for the later parts of Willow Point when it was built. It's all the way in the back. There's a small recreation area there, and then next to that there is a detention pond back there. On the side that's closer to the city of Schertz, there is no detention pond there because that part of that subdevelopment was built before we had those stringent regulations on stormwater outflow. So the object is, as the rules from the government have gotten more stringent about stormwater outflow, the city has mirrored those rules in their plans to make sure that when something gets built, if you take raw land and you develop it, there's going to be more runoff. There's sidewalks and streets and driveways and roofs and all those things. The object of a detention pond is to make it so that the stormwater leaving that property is equal to or less than the volume that was there before the property was developed. And our regulations now are, we detain 120% of what pre-development water is. So if your area, and we measure this, and I'm just going to get way technical, but stormwater is measured in cubic feet per second. It's a volume of water measured over time. So if your subdevelopment, before it was built, it pushed 100 cubic feet per second off the property downstream, when they finished building that property, it can only now push out 80 cubic feet per second. So a 20% decline in the amount of water going towards downtown Cibolo or downtown Schertz, depending on where you are. Some of our stormwater kind of splits up and goes towards the Schertz direction if you're right up against the edge there. But the majority of it comes right through here on Town Creek, literally comes right through the middle of town here, converges at FM 78 by City Hall, goes underneath, goes past the YMCA, it's going around to Hickerville Road, where we're building that very, very large bridge. So to give you a rough idea, that bridge is designed to hold 16,400 cubic feet of water per second. That's 115,000 gallons per second of flow that bridge is designed to convey underneath there. So every second, 115,000, 115,000, 115,000, just like that. It is a tremendous amount of water.
You said we had 200-year events?
Yeah, 100-year events is a misnomer. In technical terms, they're called 1%. There's a 1% chance on any given day that event will occur.
So we're good for the next.
Or next week. Because that's why we call them 1% event, because on any given day with a certain weather pattern, there's a 1% chance it can recur. It doesn't mean that if it happens once, it's not going to happen again for 100 years. And that's where everybody's like, well, we just had one of those 5 years ago. And it's like, yep. It's used, that name is used to delineate a certain type of storm or a volume of rain coming down in a given time frame. It really isn't based on the chances of it happening in 100 years. It's statistically, that rainfall rate wouldn't have happened more than once in 100 years. Well, the weather's changed. I'm not going to get into the whole climate thing, but the weather's changed, how it rains changed, the volume of rain changed. Those things are important to understand as subdevelopments are built. This is why the city went from a 100% detention policy to a 120% detention policy to put a certain safeguard in there so that we can handle that level of. Yes, ma'am. The Nava Crossing does have a large detention pond in the back. It's back by the lift station. It's an area that isn't fully developed yet. And when that area is fully developed, that will be a very large detention pond. It's basically taking care of approximately 500 homes back there.
And that's road that takes you straight back up on the right side there?
Yes, ma'am. When you go past this circle and you go past Unit 1, and then you kind of have to turn in to get into Unit 1 and 2, where that road stops, there's a new road being built and that goes back. All in there, there's a detention pond way in the back. You're very welcome. Any other questions on detention ponds? It's one of my favorite subjects. And everybody cringes when they find out that basically the HOA is responsible for maintaining them. Saratoga basically has 3.
Well,
It's right there next to your fountain. There's a very small one up at the top before it channels the water down and it runs along the backside. It's technically a detention pond. It has a rating.
The one that's taking it down toward Bella Rosa?
Yes. Right up there in the little corner is a top.
They dropped for you all
Yep. That's all taken into consideration.
But you're saying that would be our problem?
No, I'm not referring to the large cutout area we just rebuilt. Yes, that one where the rocks are and you have concrete in the area, that is technically maintained by the HOA. You bet. And I've memorized everybody's plats here, so I can tell you. And I see that we had another council person walk in, Ms. Norma Sanchez Stevens is here.
Morning.
Thank you for being here today, ma'am. Any other questions on my favorite subject, stormwater?
I had no idea. We definitely have the right co-presenter as it relates to detention ponds and knowing specifically how many ponds are associated with each community. Fantastic. So one thing I'll mention real quick, the last point on this slide, so we'll move into parking. There are some areas that may be outside of your community's technical boundaries. They may not be common areas. They may not be owned by the HOA. And I have seen it in some documents where the HOA has the right but not the obligation to maintain areas that abut the community, and usually in the spirit of, you know, making it look more aesthetically pleasing, whether that's mowing an esplanade or maybe planting something simple in that area. I don't want to trip over the city by any means.
So let me explain on that. So in 2010, City Council here passed an ordinance number 930. It's also in our Code of Ordinances. You can look it up under 46.55, and it delineates areas of responsibility that are common areas. So we get this question frequently. My property ends right there, my property line's at the sidewalk. Who maintains the grass between the sidewalk and the curb? The homeowner does.
Common question.
We get that all the time. Well, I don't understand, it's in the city's right of way. I said, well, the city passed an ordinance 13 and a half, almost 14 years ago, because that kept coming up on who maintains that. So the city doesn't have the capacity to go out and mow a 2.5 foot wide or 3 foot wide strip in front of 10,800 houses here in the community. It's just not possible. So just like in anywhere else, you're responsible up to the curb. The homeowner is. So while they're mowing the rest of their yard, they can basically make one pass down there and it's taken care of. Yes, ma'am.
Kind of along the parking lines in the common areas, on the corner of Old Weederstein and Cibolo Valley Drive, there's that huge open area.
It is there.
Yes, and our HOA mows that. I guess I'm asking whose responsibility and who actually owns that area?
That's an excellent point. Believe it or not, the HOA still owns that area behind that fence. That's why they're maintaining it. It was set aside, so the houses, there's a small triangle-shaped piece of property right there at Old Weederstein and Cibolo Valley Drive. It was carved out that way when that subdevelopment was built 25 years ago, so that Old Weederstein has the capacity to be moved over slightly and go straight through all the way to 3009. So in the future, the city of Schertz is going to build Old Weederstein from 3009 over to that intersection. That intersection will be realigned, and that area was set aside by the HOA for future use, so when the road needed to be realigned in that area, there was somewhere to do it where we weren't taking someone's house down or taking out backyards.
Okay, and then along that line, there are always vehicles parked there for sale, and a lot of times they've been called on, and it said that the city of Schertz is responsible. So
I can visit with our police department. I can tell you that from my understanding, that area south of Old Weederstein, that little triangle area, is inside the city of Cibolo. The traffic control signal at the Old Weederstein, Cibolo Valley Drive intersection is maintained by the city of Cibolo. It's not a Schertz light. So we maintain that area. That's our light. We maintain the sidewalks there. As part of that project, when we rebuilt Cibolo Valley Drive, that was the agreement that intersection was ours. The other intersection at Rips Chrysler up by the Santikos Theater, that would be maintained by Schertz. You're very welcome. And I'm sorry if I'm taking up too much time. But
No, this is why you're part of this, to answer the questions that the citizens have. So if there's no more question regarding drainage, I'll just kind of recap it with, if the HOA owns it, the HOA is going to have to maintain it. And what was the name of that ordinance again regarding the sidewalk area? What was the
It's
reference?
ordinance 930, it was passed in 2010, and in our code of ordinances, if you look it up electronically, it's at 46.55. And I know that because we reference it so frequently that I don't have to.
46.55 is the ordinance regarding the common area maintenance for the city of Cibolo. So with that, let's move into another hot topic for HOAs and sometimes cities, I imagine, parking. So I always point my board members, the residents of communities to.
I'm going to go and sit down, and if anybody's a question, I'll be in the back, because this is where this is not my area of expertise. Parking.
Okay. So I always point my board members and residents of communities to the governing documents. What do your governing documents say about parking? And by a show of hands, is there anyone that has private streets in their community? No, so I'm seeing just all public streets. So usually parking restrictions are going to be in the declaration, and it will dictate whether there's on-street parking is permitted or whether parking must be in the driveway alone. It's always a challenge for communities where they have public streets and there's parking on those streets. Even if there is a restriction in the declaration prohibiting street parking, they're public streets, so the HOA's jurisdiction is somewhat limited. The declaration is the equivalent of a contract. So by someone buying into a community, they agree to abide by the restrictions within that declaration, up to and including not parking on the street. Now, it doesn't mean that the HOA can tow because it's not the HOA street. It also doesn't mean, at least in my legal recommendation, that the HOA should or can sue people for parking on the street. But there are a few things that the HOA usually can do by virtue of that contract, the declaration. It can pursue enforcement of parking on public streets, demand letters. If there's fining authority, yes, there can be a fine implemented for parking on public streets, but setting expectations, you are going to run into some challenges by virtue of the streets being public. Happens all the time, happens everywhere. You know, I lived in a community once that for a bit where street parking was the norm. Every day trying to get home, I'm dipping over here in this little driveway cut out so the school bus or somebody else can come by, coming back out, playing chicken with anyone else that's come in the opposite direction. I've heard it all. What about fire trucks? What about EMS? What about school buses? What about, you know, big trucks just trying to get through? It's a safety hazard. We can't see if a child squirts out from a driveway. All of those things are legitimate concerns and things that, you know, I've definitely heard from memberships. But do the best you can with the covenants that you have. If the covenants prohibit street parking, it's usually my token advice that you probably should try to prohibit street parking. So a lot of it may not come down to the specific enforcement mechanisms as much as it comes down to an education campaign for your community. Reminding people that it is a restriction, reminding people that it does have an effect on the aesthetics of the community. But as maybe you've already seen, parking in the street is a polarizing issue. There's probably equal number of people that want to park on the street versus people that don't want any street parking. So you'll find out real quick what the percentages are in your community if you once you try to pursue that street parking. When it comes to blocking fire hydrants, fire lanes, driveways, and sidewalks, you know, I think that is where the city can come in and help. If these are public streets and they are blocking fire hydrants, then I think that's, I'm going to put the city on the spot a little bit here, but that's most likely a scenario where the city can help rectify that issue. I would say equally so if someone's parking in a way that blocks a driveway. But the most common complaint that leaves everyone kind of scratching their head is, there's a strange car parked in front of my house. I don't want it there. Well, you know, the HOA can do the best it can with the restrictions that it has, but the HOA can't come out and tow that car. The city can't come out and tow that car. They are public streets, and so long as they're not blocking a fire hydrant or a driveway, it's going to be one of those circumstances where there'll be a process to move that vehicle that usually just involves the HOA enforcing its restrictions. Traffic violations. As you heard me kind of allude to in the beginning, this is a real common topic at HOA meetings. What's the HOA going to do about speeding? Homeowners are running stop signs in our community. What's the HOA going to do about that? The short answer is nothing. The HOA is not in a position to write tickets. The HOA is not in a position to enforce traffic violations. We don't have radars. We don't have radar detectors, not radar detectors. We don't have speed measurement devices. In the history, my experience in this area of almost 20 years, I've only ever had 2 HOAs that wrote tickets for speeding, and that's because they had private streets and they paid their security patrols to write these tickets based on speed detection devices. So having paid security vendors with speed detection devices on hand daily is not a cheap endeavor, and only one that can be taken on if you have private streets. So that is the exception, not the rule, and it's really one of those notions where the HOA can be part of the education campaign as it relates to helping everybody remember to slow down, remember to stop completely at all stop signs. I have seen HOAs partner with local PD, particularly when school's getting back in session, starting back again. Maybe have an officer camp out at a busy intersection at the beginning of school, kind of reminding everyone they need to stop completely or slow down. And it doesn't take much more than a half a day of writing tickets before it spreads throughout the community that everybody knows at a particular intersection or a particular curve, there may be law enforcement waiting to hand out a ticket for a traffic violation. Referencing traffic control devices, speed bumps, stop signs, speed humps, another polarizing option. If you kind of assume that everyone in the community is going to be in favor of a stop sign to slow everyone down, not the people that reside close to that stop sign. That's because garbage trucks, school buses, any vehicle that makes a tremendous amount of noise that has squeaky brakes is going to stop and start in close proximity to their home. So I've heard stories of frustrated residents when a private gated community put up a stop sign, that resident went out and pulled up that stop sign and threw it on the ground. So not everybody is going to be in favor of what you think is a good idea to slow down those in cars in your neighborhood. The same thing with speed bumps and speed humps. Everybody wants them until they're right outside of their own driveway. I'm getting this from okay, so I'll make it real easy. That will not be a polarizing issue for you because there are not any speed bumps or humps in the city of Cibolo. Do I have that correct? Okay, I have that correct. So that's one where you won't have to worry about. I see a hand over here.
One of the neighborhoods, one of the things you can do if you're having a really bad speeding issue in your neighborhood is reach out to your council member. And I'm the council rep that includes Buffalo Crossing. Buffalo Crossing has a main way that has 2 wide side sections with a center median. And nobody was sure if it was supposed to be 2 lanes on either side or 1 lane on either side. The developer had told them they would put in a bike lane. That never happened. There's no stripes, nothing. So we did a series of community meetings with that neighborhood where the neighborhood decided on 2 options to send out to the entire community. The community voted on which of those options they preferred. One was doing 2 lanes on either side. The other option was to do a bike lane and 1 lane on either side of the median. The bike lane won, so we're working on getting that taken care of. But that's a community-led initiative. So when you make changes
back.
In your scenario, since the community voted on bike lanes, who will end up paying for those stripes for bike lanes?
The city will end up paying for it. We do have a street maintenance fund. I think this year it has 750,000.
775,000 now.
775,000 in it, so that fund is used for fixing roads, for restriping, things like that, the minor-ish repairs. Big repairs like Silver Valley Drive, we can't pay for that, that is our maintenance fund, that's a separate pot of money. But the maintenance fund will pay for that. With Buffalo Crossing, we would have done the striping right away, but we saw that the road had some cracks and some things that needed to be fixed. So we waited for the new fiscal year that starts tomorrow, and we'll start to work on that road, fixing those little mini potholes before they get worse, fixing the cracking before it gets worse, doing the slurry seal over the top so it looks nice and fancy, brand new, but it also helps extend the life of that road. We'd rather do that, spend a little bit more money fixing the base road before putting lipstick on a pig. I think that was the term that we used. We don't want to slap the stripes down on a road that we're gonna have to tear up and fix if we don't fix those minor things right now. So that process has taken longer than we anticipated just because we're like, let's not just put the stripes down, let's actually try to do the minor maintenance so that this lasts an additional 5, 10 years. I don't know how many years we're gonna get extra out of it, but it'll help that we aren't having to tear it up and replace the whole thing immediately.
Mrs. Cunningham is absolutely correct. Given the cost of striping, if you're going to spend $50,000 or $60,000 striping a road, you want to start with the best possible pavement you can. In this case, when we did an up-close survey of the road, we found that where the trees are on the center islands, there was a lot of significant cracking and depression that was occurring in the road, and water was getting in there, which was just causing further deterioration of the road. So the object was we're going to fix that first, then we're going to basically put the striping down second. The object is to give them the best possible road, maybe extend the life of that road, needing a full reconstruction by 7 to 10 years, maybe even a little more. And just better stewardship of the money instead of just throwing the stripes down and say, we'll come back and mill them all off and do them again in 2 years. Let's spend the money so we get more bang for our buck and more time out of the object. It came up a little while ago. Mrs. Cunningham mentioned stop signs. It's really important to note, I am not the expert on traffic control, but I can tell you that in the past, people have a misunderstanding of the purpose of a stop sign. A stop sign is normally to provide safety for traveling motorists, either for intersections that are difficult to navigate because of the volume and the fact that there's been accidents there, or for pedestrians if you're going to have a pedestrian crosswalk area. Stop signs are normally a process where you have to do what's called a warrant study. That is a full engineering study of the intersection to determine how many vehicles are coming through the intersection, what their turning motions are, whether they're driving straight through the intersection, making a left or a right, and the amount of cars that are there at peak times as well as the rest of the time. The one thing stop signs are not designed to do is control speed. There are other ways to control speed, but just putting a stop sign up to slow people down is contrary to the manual on uniform traffic control devices put out by the Texas Department of Transportation, and we use that as far as how we place our signs and how we manage our pavement. I just wanted to make sure, if you don't mind, I just wanted to clarify that because we get constantly, people call up and say, why can't you just put a stop sign right here on my block so we can slow people down? Well, it just may not be warranted. It'd be the wrong use. There are other ways to get people to slow down. Enforcement, electronic signs that flash and tell you when you're going too fast, those type of things. But just putting stop signs everywhere basically slows traffic down. Believe it or not, stop signs are noisy. People go, how can that be? Well, cars have to stop. There's usually some noise associated with stopping. And then you've got a teenager in the neighborhood, basically it's going to be their opportunity to, that trash can muffler they got on the car to move down the road making a bunch of noise. So there's a sound component attached to stop signs. Yes, ma'am.
You said that the city of Civil doesn't have any speed bumps. Is that because we banned them or because we just don't have any? Based on our working with the fire department and the emergency management services, people have asked us not to install them. And the reason we don't install them is if you put a speed hump in, a fire truck or an ambulance has to come to a complete stop at that speed hump. They cannot even go over it at 5 or 10 miles an hour. And here's why. If there's a patient in the back, that patient's going to wind up being in the air for a few seconds as they go over. Fire trucks carry water. Water is contained in a tank in the back of the fire truck. It's in a plastic tank contained by a steel enclosure. When you go over that, as the truck goes up and down, the water basically becomes less, it weighs less as gravity allows it to move up. As the truck starts to sink down, then the water hits back down on top of the tank. The tanks aren't designed for that, and the tanks fail. That's a common issue nowadays because everybody's got a plastic tank inside a steel enclosure. In the old days, when they were made out of thick steel and they were wall welded together, it wasn't the challenge they are nowadays. But with the newer fire apparatus, they're trying to keep the weight down. They don't use thick quarter-inch steel plate tanks any longer. They use a thin steel reinforcement and put a polypropylene tank inside of it. And those tanks will not tolerate that water going up in the air and coming back down and slamming. It will break the tank.
Is that metal structure with a cage around it?
It's fully encased.
Can you tell us a little bit what goes on into a pedestrian crosswalk study? What goes into a pedestrian crosswalk study?
So the pedestrian crosswalk study is basically done very similar to a stop sign study. So for us, when we put a crosswalk in, there's a few things we're looking for. One is mid-block crosswalks are to be avoided at any cost unless there's no way to get around them. Because the average person driving down the road is not expecting to have a crosswalk just in the middle of the road. There are exceptions to that rule, and that is when you have a very condensed Old Town section like we have on Main Street, where you have a bunch of small businesses that have taken over the older houses there, and you have like an entertainment area or a dining area that's in an older area and the roads are very narrow. There isn't any way to basically get people to cross those roads because there really aren't any crossroads that line up evenly all the way down there. That's why on Main Street you see that there's a series of crosswalks that some align with a T intersection and some do not. That is not the norm. We don't normally do those, and if we do those, we normally have an engineer study that to determine the safety factor, including the speed of the cars. That's why the speed limit downtown has been lowered to 25, which is the bare minimum speed permitted by the state of Texas now. You can't have 20-mile-an-hour areas anymore unless you can do a traffic study that absolutely proves that you have such a serious issue there that you have less than 25-mile-an-hour speed limit.
You're saying it's a scenario like Immigrants Drive, which does have some mid-block or whatever you're saying, not at an intersection. Buffalo Crossing kind of has the same scenario, but I don't know where they have any pedestrian crosswalks.
So Buffalo, that's a great point. So with Buffalo Crossing, it isn't just we're putting stripes down. We're actually basically doing some traffic calming striping. So we're narrowing up that roadway, which is now 22.5-foot nominal width. That roadway will now only have a 12-foot traveling width. We are segregating off 5 feet for a bike lane on one side, and we're going to move the traveling lane in by 8 feet on the other side with a stripe, so that basically there's just one lane going down the middle, and then there will be additional signage at each of the areas where a new crosswalk is going in with advance warning and crosswalks and extra striping in those areas to ensure people are slowing down and giving the people that are walking across the road an opportunity to walk across the road safely. And Mrs. Cunningham was right. We went through a traffic study there and we looked at all those intersections. Everybody was stunned when it was determined there isn't enough cross traffic to warrant a four-way stop at all those intersections. And as a matter of fact, they didn't even come close to warning, if I'm not mistaken.
And there are very specific requirements for it, and we didn't even do it, like, it wasn't the city, we had a third-party consultant engineer who is specialized in traffic that had to do it according to the state standards, and it wasn't even close.
Wasn't even close.
Okay, I have another question, sorry. Bitwood Ranch Pass, there's a crosswalk, there's a bike path, it's notorious for cars trying to turn on the road, they can't see the bike path coming in either direction. What do you do in a scenario like that, or how did that come to be in that particular location?
So in this year's maintenance work, we're going to be restriping all that area in that general area. We're going to be adding additional signage there. That's part of a linear trail that was built into that subdevelopment and crosses there. The traffic there is greater than was anticipated when that was designed 14 years ago, 15 years ago, and it's just the fact that there's just more and more cars. I would have preferred that crosswalk was moved down to the intersection in a more controlled area, but it's not. It's about 150 feet to the west of the intersection. It's just how it was designed. And I can tell you that I didn't work here when it was designed, or I would have raised my hands and stomped my feet going, I don't think that's a good idea. But at this point in time, it's difficult to change those because you would have to literally move sidewalks and a bunch of other items. I'm giving you, not taking up too much time, but giving you the answers you're looking for. I'll be in the back, and I have cards in the back if anybody wants to pick up my cards. I didn't bring enough for everybody, but I brought enough for about half of them. So we can either cut them in half and give someone, or every other person gets one. I know that Ivory's got me on speed dial, so we talk all the time.
Good.
Sir?
Thank you. I've got a couple more slides, and I just saw lunch arrive, so let me get through these 2 slides, and then we'll take a quick break for lunch before I start the next segment. So security, safety, crime, another common topic at HOA meetings. What is the board going to do about break-ins? What is the board going to do about vehicle burglaries? And there's a few things that the HOA can do, but it's very important to note at the end of the day the HOA is not law enforcement, does not have the same capabilities as law enforcement. And there's usually disclaimers in declarations and covenants these days that homeowners and the resident are responsible for protecting their own selves and their own property. But that doesn't mean the HOA can't do anything. Some HOAs will pay off-duty law enforcement to patrol the community. Sometimes that could be a clubhouse, a swimming pool. I don't know what happens in Texas every summer. It's a phenomenon of teenagers breaking into the pool area, throwing all the pool furniture into the swimming pool, or worse. And so that's just one example where sometimes off-duty law enforcement will help. Also, security vendors. There's companies out there that the HOA can employ or contract with to patrol the neighborhood. Not going to sugarcoat it. It's not cheap. And oftentimes what your security vendor is going to do if there's a crime, your security vendor is going to call the police. So just setting your expectations there. A lot of talk these days about crime deterrence as it relates to cameras in or on HOA-owned property. Setting your expectations. Cameras don't necessarily solve the crimes. They're there as a deterrent, and I've seen it over and over again where maybe that camera catches video of someone jumping the fence to the pool area, for example, throwing things in the pool. HOA wants to submit that video publicly to see if anybody can identify this kid or this person that committed that crime. My advice is always going to be, we're not the ones that solve the crimes. Let law enforcement solve the crimes. Let's turn the video over to law enforcement to see if they can do it. The last thing I would want to happen for a community is for the wrong person to be assumed to be in that video, and the next thing you know, someone has to move, or worse, because they're assumed to be that criminal when it was just a case of mistaken identity. So all the more reason for law enforcement be the detectives and the crime solvers. So just a few points on true stories. That first bullet point is a little bit indented over, and it shouldn't be. The example there, this was a story a manager told me last week. There was a suspicious vehicle in the neighborhood. Somebody called the manager's cell phone at 1 o'clock in the morning to tell the community manager, there's a suspicious vehicle in the neighborhood. The manager said, what do you want me to do about it? The homeowner said, well, can you just go stop them and ask them what they're doing in our community? And the manager said, absolutely not. Hang up the phone with me now and call police. I know, there's a lot of humor in there, but that is a lot of the thinking among residents in HOAs, that the HOA is the ultimate problem solver up to and including crime. This one's another fun one. This happened in the Houston area after Hurricane Harvey. When is the HOA going to turn my power back on? Also, we've kind of already talked about this as it relates to traffic. We think the HOA needs to put a stoplight here. you know, far beyond the scope of authority, scope of financial capability, scope of rights or authority to, for an HOA to do this. Suspicious vehicle, you've heard me tell that story. Mental health issue. We've had an experience in a community where there was an adult child that was living at home that was having a mental health crisis. He became fixated on the family behind them and kept jumping the fence and entering the home of the neighbor. The HOA was called. What are you going to do about this mental health issue? What are you going to do about this individual that keeps coming into my house with this mental health issue? We tried our best to work with local law enforcement there to figure out how we could help this family deal with this circumstance and help the adult child suffering from that mental health circumstance to get the help that he needed. But it was automatically assumed from the get-go, this is an HOA problem to solve, and just far outside the capabilities of HOAs for sure. And this statement here, law enforcement can't do anything, that's why I'm calling the HOA. That's usually said in response when we say, this is really a law enforcement issue, we can't help you with that. And they'll say, law enforcement can't do anything, that's why I'm calling you. You know, we don't have, HOAs don't necessarily have the badges and everything that comes with it necessary to do the things that law enforcement can do and take the risks that law enforcement take on behalf of citizens. So usually a misunderstanding there that needs to be educated and corrected. And then finally, another true story, we think this is a drug house. What is the HOA going to do about it? Again, we don't chase the bad guys, we don't solve the crimes. Even if we caught someone selling drugs out of a house, we don't have handcuffs, we don't have badges, we don't have the authority, and the list goes on and on of the things that HOAs do not have to pursue issues like this. But I thought you just use this slide to give you an idea of where some of the misconceptions are as to how broad the scope of authority is of an HOA. It's very narrow, and it's almost always simply limited to maintaining common areas, which we've learned today could include drainage ditches, or likely includes drainage ditches, detention ponds, and all areas owned by the HOA, and then enforcing the covenants within the boundaries of that community. Beyond that, the HOA scope of authority pretty much ends. But always check your governing documents. Don't forget to look for your plats. They may be hard, or they may not be in your closing packet from when you bought the property, but I was very pleased to hear that the city has offered to help you find those plats. They are recorded, they are publicly available, and with that, I think we'll break for lunch before we move on to neighborhood watch programs. Question here, sir. Go ahead.
This could wait. So, reporting or identified sexual offenders that have moved into the neighborhood, registered sex offenders. What's the scope of what responsibilities of an HOA again? Because it came up during a quarterly meeting for us.
Great question, and I'll make sure I repeat it for the audience in the recording. Sexual offenders, registered sexual offenders, what is the HOA's scope of authority? What is the HOA's responsibility as it relates to, I guess, communicating that to the community? My firm opinion is that the HOA should not be the communicator of the registered sex offenders living in a community. There's a story, a case actually, I think it was out of California, don't quote me on that, where an HOA was putting out names of registered sex offenders, and in a case of mistaken identity, claimed that a resident in the community was a registered sex offender, and he was not. And you know how the story ends. The HOA paid a king's ransom to settle that lawsuit, and frankly, notifying the community of the location of registered sex offenders is absolutely outside the scope of what an HOA should be doing. There's a public website. I want to say it's the Texas Department of Public Safety. But don't quote me on that. I'm seeing a head nod from law enforcement back there that it is the Texas Department of Public Safety. That's where your residents should get information on registered sex offenders in the community, and it should not come through the board of directors or through the association.
So for us to say, go see that website is okay?
So the question is, so,
Not necessarily the answer to the question, but just say, for situational awareness for the community, you can go to this website.
so just for the recording, I'll say that the question is, so is it okay for the HOA to point residents to this website? The answer is yes, for them to answer their own question. If you're interested in the registered sex offenders in the community or need to answer that question, resident, Texas Department of Public Safety has a website. That's where you go to get that information. Great question. Any other questions before we break? Yes, ma'am.
Just real quick, how long, how much of the, I guess, the community has to be developed, I guess, before you can build out your board of, your executive committee, board of directors, whatever that is, your officers that run the community, like the HOA specifically? How much of that? When is it established? We're in an area called Water Crossings. It's in, we were told 50%, then we're told 51%, and we've been told different things. We really don't know legally what that is.
So I'll restate your question and tell me if I'm on the right track here, but I believe your question is, at what point does a developing community turn the board over to residents to run the HOA organization? Is that? Yes. Okay. So Texas has one statute on this issue as it relates to hitting the 75% mark. So once a community is built out, 75% sold to end users, non-builders, then one resident director needs to be elected by the membership. Beyond that statute, in terms of when the rest of the board would be turned over to resident control, that's going to be governed by the declaration or your governing documents. There's usually some type of transition provision, and it will identify the points at which the developer will turn the community over to resident control. Sometimes it's a date, like it may say January 1st of 2035. Sometimes it may have a percentage of build out, and sometimes it may be, that percentage may even be 100% build out. And also usually the developer reserves the right to turn the community over to the residents at any time. So that's usually what I see. It's definitely document specific, but that's kind of the overview of what I would say is the industry standard when it comes to transitioning from developer to resident controlled. Sure. So what I'm hearing is perhaps community specific. And so the answer I'm going to be able to give you as I stand here without your governing documents is just going to be very general and an overview. But it's going to come down to what's in the governing documents and really what the legal ramifications of those documents as it relates to transition. But it's important to know that the developer is, for all intents and purposes, the creator of the community, and they create it the way that they have outlined that they're going to create it in the declaration. So when you have an intersection between developer and builder, and I heard investor in your comment, that's going to be so fact-specific that there's not going to be a clear answer that I can give you here today. Any other questions before we break?
Yeah, the biggest thing, like he was saying, is getting your documents and reading them and understanding which sections really apply. The documents should say once there are X amount of homes or X percentage of homes that are owner occupied, then the balance of power transfers from the developer to the HOA members. So all of that's in there, and like Mr. Biggs was telling like, most of the time in development, they were asking about a stoplight on 78 in their neighborhood. That is coming, but their neighborhood has to be at a certain capacity before the developer is obligated to put that in. And so, that's the process. All that will be outlined in their documents. So although getting the documents will sometimes be a short.
All right, let's break for lunch, everyone. Thank you. Tea back, are we good to go? Okay. So what I have for you in this next segment will be liability and neighborhood watch programs. Know that the spirit from which this presentation originates is I approach this from the perspective as to what creates liability for HOAs. I definitely don't want this to sound like I'm saying that neighborhood watch programs are a bad idea. My point of this presentation is that HOAs being the neighborhood watch program is a bad idea. And the story that I will bring to your attention here involves George Zimmerman and the death of Trayvon Martin. I think most of you are probably aware of that event. It happened over 10 years ago now, but if there's anyone that's not familiar with the George Zimmerman, Trayvon Martin tragedy, let me know and I can give you a Cliff's Notes version. But we're going to use that story as a blueprint for what not to do. And when I say that, for what HOAs should not do as it relates to neighborhood watch programs. There's a very tried and true way to set up a neighborhood watch program. What I'm about to show you is the way not to do it if you are an HOA. And so Trayvon Martin's death really changed the landscape of how HOA neighborhood watch programs are structured. I'm going to show you what the real cost of that neighborhood watch program was in the community. And this aspect of that tragedy didn't really make the headlines or the front pages of the news. What was in the back pages, more or less, was the Homeowners Association settlement payout to the surviving parents of Trayvon Martin. There's a report that it was over $1 million in the Orlando Sentinel. CNN reported on this. Again, the Orlando Sentinel reported on it. Let me make sure I kind of set the geography here correctly. This is in Florida, in the Orlando area. The community is referred to as the Retreat at Twin Lakes. You're going to see some references to RTL, Retreat at Twin Lakes, throughout these slides. Let me go back. The research that I did, and this presentation was done or created several years ago, but back then the FBI transcripts were available. Interviews with the board members of the HOA, interviews with the members of the Neighborhood Watch Program. Residents were interviewed. The community manager was also interviewed. I was able to find the actual PowerPoint that the local PD presented on the Neighborhood Watch Program and how to do it to the citizens or residents of the Retreat at Twin Lakes. And then you're going to see some Retreat at Twin Lakes publications as part of this as well. And so we're going to learn from the Retreat at Twin Lakes. HOA does not equal security. I've already kind of touched on that. I'm going to show you how you can structure a neighborhood watch program and create a legal defense for the community. So here is a snapshot of the Retreat at Twin Lakes, 263 townhomes. It was a gated community, or is a gated community. And this valuation of $250,000, I'll have to go back in time. This is this is before the event, so 2010, 2011. This is the value, average value of the homes. So what kind of was a precursor to this experience is typical for some communities, hopefully not that many, but there was an increase in break-ins experienced in 2011. You know, TVs, electronics, you know, quick, I won't call them smash and grabs, but in and out burglaries, some bicycles, some things that were kind of easy to grab when someone broke into one of the townhomes and, you know, someone made a quick exit a few minutes later. Ownership was frustrated with crime. Certainly understand the why of that. The community considered hiring law enforcement, but that was too expensive. And so Neighborhood Watch became the solution. So George Zimmerman contacted the local PD for Neighborhood Watch program information. The community gave Zimmerman permission to use the HOA clubhouse for the Neighborhood Watch program meeting, and local PD came out and presented, here's how you set up a Neighborhood Watch program. You'll hear some of that here shortly from your local PD. Oops. This thing's... So the content here is actually taken directly from the local PD's PowerPoint that I was able to find online. What a Neighborhood Watch program does, and I suspect that some of this is going to line up with what you're going to see here in a bit. Observe and recognize. Observe and immediately report. The liaison to the police, not the vigilante police. More content from that local PD's Neighborhood Watch program PowerPoint. What you will not do is get physically involved with any activity you report. You report, but do not apprehend suspicious persons. Do not take any risks to prevent crime or try to make an arrest. Not sure what's happening. It's jumping on me. There we go. Block captain responsibilities. The block captain, again, this is taken from the actual PowerPoint I found, shares the Neighborhood Watch program concept, distributes news and crime prevention information, prepares an area map, collects telephone numbers and addresses, and then relays crime activity information. So as I went through the FBI transcripts, the interviews of everyone in the community, you could kind of clearly see that there were some differing perspectives on the creation of this Neighborhood Watch program and who was actually running it and who was responsible, and whether it was the HOA or whether it was separate, and even whether George Zimmerman was a board member on the HOA. So a board member stated that the Neighborhood Watch program was a volunteer community. The manager's impression was that the residents were in support of the Neighborhood Watch program and George Zimmerman. The membership impression was the HOA started the Neighborhood Watch program. The police impression was that George Zimmerman was actually on the board of directors of the HOA. So you can probably see where I'm headed with this. The Neighborhood Watch program was very much viewed by most people as being part of the HOA. So here's where we get to where the HOA did things incorrectly and got themselves subject to that upwards of $1 million settlement. HOA asked Zimmerman to be the coordinator of the Neighborhood Watch program. You know, actually or apparently he served as the committee chair So your HOAs can create committees that help that organization make decisions. Sometimes it's the architectural committee. That's probably the most common committee that you're familiar with. Could be a finance committee to help with the budget. Could be a landscape committee. But the significance of that committee being underneath the umbrella of the HOA is everything that committee does can be traced back to the HOA as an organization. And that's really how the HOA was held potentially liable for that $1 million settlement. So Neighborhood Watch Program meetings were contained inside of the HOA meetings. I actually found some references that Zimmerman was given business cards to hand out to the community with this email address, RTL Neighborhood, Retreat at Twin Lakes Neighborhood at Gmail. It had his contact information. This is actually taken from a newsletter from the Retreat at Twin Lakes. And near the bottom, the last two lines, help keep our community safe. Email rtlneighborhood@gmail.com. For more information, call George Zimmerman. This is in the HOA's newsletter for the Retreat at Twin Lakes. And here's the kicker. This is a tweet from the Retreat at Twin Lakes. Our neighborhood watch leads to 4 arrests and burglaries in the RTL, Retreat at Twin Lakes. Great job, exclamation point. So lots of things definitely indicating that this neighborhood watch program, this neighborhood watch committee was functioning as or under the umbrella of the HOA. So on earth as it is in Texas, this is where I get a little nerdy on you and kind of point you to some of the law that it talks about apparent authority. About authority in general. There's express authority, apparent authority, and implied authority. And that's where the legal analysis is as to if we were to take that experience in Florida, place it in Texas, these are the legal principles that would apply to whether or not that committee had the authority to act under the umbrella of the HOA or could be perceived as acting under the umbrella of the HOA. So express authority is what it sounds like. An organization or a board intentionally confers that authority, intentionally allows agent, that would be George Zimmerman, and the Neighborhood Watch Committee to believe that authority exists, or a lack of due care allowed the agent to believe, Zimmerman to believe that he had that authority. I felt like it was pretty clear in my opinion that Zimmerman had the express authority to act as a representative of the HOA. Here's apparent authority, and you'll kind of see they get increasingly softer starting from express. Led the person to believe that they have the authority, knowingly permitted the person to hold self out as the authority. Lack of ordinary care created the presence of that authority. I could certainly make the argument that George Zimmerman had the apparent authority to act as a representative of the HOA. And then finally, we have ratification. Approved by word, act, or conduct. After acquiring full knowledge of the act, you can kind of say that maybe you didn't expressly say to George Zimmerman he could be the Neighborhood Watch Committee for the HOA, but you figured out what he was doing, you saw what he was doing, you said, yeah, great job to our Neighborhood Watch Committee. You've helped with 4 arrests, and then you tweet it out publicly. Definitely that's an act of ratification there. So here's the true cost. So you heard me reference the $250,000 townhome values, again going back to 2010, 2011. When I initially created this presentation in 2013, the values had dropped to between $116,000 and $127,000. Today, I just checked a few days ago, the values of townhomes in that community are just now crept up to what they were in the 2010, 2011s. 285 to 315. At the time in 2013, over 10% of the community had been foreclosed. That's a massively high percentage. and it's very difficult for any community to kind of bounce back from that. And not to mention community morale. Their community was definitely put out there in the media. And what happens after that? Who's going to raise their hand to serve on the board of directors for the retreat at Twin Lakes? Probably no one. Insurable. You know, you've heard me reference a settlement amount of $1 million. We know it was at least, well, we know it was larger than $1 million. The ultimate settlement amount was confidential. There was a report of a $1 million offer to the surviving parents of Trayvon. But then after that, the settlement negotiations became confidential. So no one really knows how much it was, but I can tell you it's probably far beyond what the insurance policy was capable of absorbing. So an event like this, for a community like that, definitely just cripples it financially. So there's no financial stability. Is it insurable? Are people paying assessments? Can you set assessments at a rate that makes sense for a community that's value dropped from $250,000 down to $115,000? And then probably the more academic question, would the HOA be liable to Zimmerman for what he had to, or what he endured? You know, you can file a lawsuit against anyone, anytime, for any reason, even no reason. And so I always wondered if Zimmerman decided to sue the HOA, saying, I did this for the HOA, and look what happened to me. HOA, it's your fault. I'm not saying that there's any legitimacy to that claim. Know that. I'm just suggesting that there could have been the opportunity, potentially, for Zimmerman to look to the HOA for the woes. So what we really learned here, the sanctity of separation from the HOA and the Neighborhood Watch Program. Can't control the actions of the Neighborhood Watch volunteers. The HOA can't control the actions of the Neighborhood Watch volunteers. It was a common practice in the Retreat at Twin Lakes Neighborhood Watch Program to pursue suspects or to confront suspects, notwithstanding all the material from the local PD telling them not to. I actually found the 911 call when Zimmerman called 911, and even the 911 operator was telling him, do not pursue the suspect. Do not get out of your car. I'm going to get out of my car. I'm going to follow him. So you can't control the Neighborhood Watch Program volunteers from the HOA's perspective. And that's why there's such a high potential for liability against the HOA if that Neighborhood Watch Program is a committee of the HOA. And apparently the HOA was unaware that Zimmerman even carried a gun, although he regularly carried it. So Neighborhood Watch does not equal HOA. Completely separate Neighborhood Watch Program. And no endorsement by the HOA, separate meetings, separate newsletters, separate website, a disclaimer if you can work with your Neighborhood Watch Program that maybe is helping your community, a disclaimer that there's no affiliation to the HOA. That's my ask or wish as a lawyer. But if the Neighborhood Watch Program says, no, I'm sorry, HOA, we're not going to do that, you know, we can ask them to do it, but I can't tell you that we can force them. Or at least an acknowledgement by the Neighborhood Watch Program for your community that there is a separation. So again, I'll kind of hammer on the point that this is not intended as content to drive you away from setting up a Neighborhood Watch Program. I just want it to be completely and utterly separate from the HOA. In closing, let's not forget that the whole impetus behind setting up a Neighborhood Watch Program under this HOA was because they couldn't afford law enforcement security, or they couldn't afford a security vendor. So a miscalculated security program is going to cost more than the actual security. And the right security can be cost effective. So definitely this is one of those stories or experiences where it's just multi-layer tragedy. A community was left in shambles. with values way below than what they started with. Surviving parents that lost a child. George Zimmerman became a joke in the media. And then finally, a 17-year-old kid lost his life. So it's one of those things where maybe the intention started out good. Hey, let's find a way to deal with crime in our community. But from the HOA's perspective, and again, that's what I do every day is look at this from the HOA's perspective, we just need to make sure that there's some separation between the Neighborhood Watch program and what the HOA is doing. And there's a way that they can coexist. So here is my prompt for the city to jump in. Do we have any questions about what I've covered? Okay, good.
So we're going to go into our flock safety presentation next, and it's actually done virtually by one of their representatives. He's actually out in California, so give us about a couple of minutes for Mr. Biegman to get the computer switched over and get logged into the virtual meeting. For those of you that were here last time, again, I'm Lieutenant John Wells with the Police Department. Last time I was interim chief, but we have our new chief, so I've gone back to my previous role, which is the lieutenant over criminal investigations. So all the detectives were the ones that look into the cases when people report things and try to solve them, put the bad guys in jail. So I did mention a little bit about flock last time at the end of the meeting. We did get some feedback from the community saying, hey, what is this all about? We're interested. We do have one community in Cibolo, Lantana subdivision, has these same, their license plate reader cameras. So they monitor all the time, and I'll let him get into the details of how it works. I don't want to steal his thunder. So, but basically it's like having a 24/7 watch person at the entrance of your neighborhood. You know, every car that goes by there, it captures a license plate. If they're not supposed to be there, he gives us a way of going back and looking at that video and pulling that, find out what that vehicle is. I will tell you, last summer, after these were installed in Lantana, they had 2 incidents where vehicles were broken into at night in Lantana. The vehicles were caught on Ring cameras, which we have a really, really good, strong network of people that have home security systems, which is great. But a lot of times when they provide us those, it might show a black car sitting in front of the house. There's not a whole lot of details for us to follow up on. But we went back to the flock system, pulled up that database of who had gone past the cameras at the entrance that night, and were able to find one black car with a license plate. So it gives us better leads and gives us stuff to follow up on. The second incident was a large Ford panel van, like any plumbing company or anything like that uses, that was involved. Again, it was seen in the neighborhood by some of the neighborhood cameras. We went back and pulled the license plates and found out that it was, you know, gave us a lead to follow up on. Unfortunately, in the cases, both of those vehicles were stolen. By the time we found them, they had kind of been dumped already in San Antonio. So it didn't help us solve those specific cases, but it gave us a lot more information than what we had if we didn't have this camera system set up, because we really wouldn't have had any leads to follow up, because how many white vans or black cars are out on the road right now. So you really have to have like a license plate. So sorry, I'm not ignoring you. Go ahead.
No, just before we get started, you're taller, I have bad ears, could you maybe raise the microphone?
Sure. I'm going to actually stop talking for a minute. I'm going to move this over here to the laptop so we all can hear what he's having to say. So we're going to get this set up and then get started. If y'all have any questions for him, we'll have to kind of repeat them back into the computer, since he won't be able to kind of see or hear a lot of what's going on here. So, but let me move this around and. Oh, we're going to stand. I think we got it, Mr. Mahoney. We'll just use the mic stand here.
Just waiting on him.
Okay. All right, so we'll wait for Ruben to join. The gentleman's name is Ruben. He should be coming on here any minute. We're 1 minute till 12, so. And each of you should have a handout or 2 different handouts that related to flock safety if you want to, that he's going to probably reference. If you don't, let me know. I've got some extras, but I went around and tried to put them on everybody's chairs when y'all were eating lunch, so.
Do it through your email? You do it through email? Did you do it through email?
We can.
Okay, is this John?
This is actually Tracy. John
Hi,
is
Tracy.
working on the speaker up there, so,
Okay. Should I just hang tight for now?
yes.
All right, we'll do. Just let me know when we're good to go.
Huh?
Thank you, Tracy.
Specs underneath, so. This is so janky. There we go. into the main part of it.
Okay, Ruben, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so we've got you kind of mic'd up through the laptop. So
Perfect.
I'm hoping the crowd can hear you that's here pretty well. So,
Yeah, just let me know if you folks can hear me. I mean, I'm glad you can hear me, John.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great.
Okay, keep talking there so I can see.
Okay, yeah. Hello, everybody. I mean, are we starting the meeting now? I'm not sure what's going on.
Yeah,
Can't see y'all.
we're what's that? It's as high as it's gonna go, yeah. I was just trying to figure out the sound issue for Ruben. Hang on a second.
Yeah, no problem.
I don't think so. Hang on just a second, Ruben.
Not a problem.
Hey, Ruben, say something for me.
Testing, 1, 2, 3, testing. Hello.
I'm trying to figure out where the microphone is in the laptop so I can get it pretty close here. So.
Sure. Testing. Mic check. Testing. Hello. This is Ruben Miranda from Block Safety Testing.
Okay, we're getting better. It's right here in the front.
Is it in the front?
Yep.
Okay.
All right, we're gonna test the microphone right quick. Hang on a second.
Sure.
There it is.
Okay.
That's better.
But it's all the way in.
It is.
Okay, Ruben, I'm gonna let you get started. We'll just have to kind of see how it goes here. I think we've got it set up the best we can do, so.
I'm plugging.
Good working. No, all I did was look at the volume, that's all. So,
Hello?
yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me.
Okay, we're gonna get started.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the volume is not the best. I will say we are recording it, so I know we've got a good signal going into the recording, so my apologies, we have to go back and review this later on time on your computer at home, so. But Ruben, you can take it away and get started, and I'll just kind of monitor things here for you.
Absolutely. I appreciate it. Hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Hopefully, y'all can see me. My name is Ruben. I am the community safety rep for your territory. I've been in talks with John in regards to our LPR license plate reading cameras. I know right now the Cibola Police Department has an MOU in place with Block Safety. And so right now I want to go ahead and give you folks all the information about our cameras, what it would look like within your communities at HOAs, and essentially how we're working with law enforcement and how we're eliminating crime. I want this to be an open forum Q&A, so at any point, John, if anyone in the audience has a question, and I'm in the middle of a sentence, please don't hesitate to interrupt. I want to make sure that we answer any and all questions. After the meeting, feel free, John, to give my information out to any communities that feel like this would be a benefit for them.
Okay, will do.
Okay, great. So again, just to kind of go over a few things, Block Safety essentially was started back in 2017. The reason why it was started, just to kind of give you some background information, is because our CEO, Garrett Langley, lives in Atlanta, Georgia, lives in a pretty affluent area, has a kid, dog, the whole 9 yards, and a lot of crime was happening in his neighborhood. And the reoccurring theme that he seemed to hear over and over and over again was the officers or detectives asking me, do you have a license plate? Did you get a license plate? Well, no, we only got a description of the vehicle, or we only got a description of the perpetrator. The main piece of evidence that officers and detectives are looking for is that license plate reading camera. And John, hopefully you can attest to that. Gives them a very big lead to go off of, because a license plate is attached to an individual, that individual is attached to a location, and it gives the officers and detectives something to work off of. So that's what our cameras are going to do for you, all right? So why flock safety? Again, we're going to go ahead and generate actionable investigative leads to help law enforcement move things quickly. We have partnerships with law enforcement across the nation, and that's what I was alluding to earlier when I said our MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. That's going to allow your cameras in your community to alert officers when a vehicle runs through your community and is on the NCIC list. And we can get to that in a moment here. I just wanted to let you know that's exactly what our cameras do. Is there any questions so far?
That's the same place.
Hey, John, any questions so far?
No questions, Ruben.
Okay. And just to kind of give you folks some numbers, 75% of crimes do involve a motor vehicle. That's why it's very important to have that license plate read. Because at the end of the day, you can have a description of a red Honda, but that's like finding a needle in the haystack. If you don't have that license plate, not saying the crime's not going to get solved, but it's much harder for officers and detectives to do their job. Okay? Looks like I have somebody else trying to enter into the meeting room. Should I allow them in, John?
Yes, please.
Okay. Okay, are we okay? Are we good?
Hang on a second, Ruben.
Hello? Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Okay.
Hello?
Now go.
Oh, that's a really, really bad echo.
Yeah. Hang on a second. Okay. All right, Ruben, try it again.
Okay, hello, can you hear me? Hello?
That's better.
Okay, yeah, I don't hear an echo, so that's good.
Okay, you can continue.
Okay.
We can continue. We put it on a cell phone that's by the microphone now, so it's working better than the laptop.
Fantastic. Okay, awesome. So just to kind of give you some numbers across the nation right now, we have over about 50,000 cameras installed nationwide, and we're only growing bigger and bigger. That number that you see here, our devices and software provide the evidence for police to solve 7% of reported crimes. That number has now gone up to just a little bit over 8%. So that's pretty huge and fantastic. And again, thousands of communities across the nation right now are trusting Flock. Word of mouth is getting huge. And not only that, we are partnering a lot with law enforcement. So it just basically works hand in hand. Law enforcement and HOA communities are on the same page, and everybody's feeling a bit safer. Okay? So I'm going to go over here to the next slide. These are kind of some of the cases that we usually see that are solved with our license plate reading cameras. Cases like arson, burglary, home theft, vandalism, amber alerts, motor vehicle, illegal dumping, so on and so forth. That nature. We've even been able to solve cases that, unfortunately, it's scary to say, but, catching a murderer who's on the run. Things of that nature. So just to kind of give you a couple examples of cases we've been able to solve. Now this is what the camera is going to look like, your Sparrow. This is the license plate reading camera. So we're going to jump into a couple bits of information here on the Sparrow, just so you understand what it would look like in the community. So basically it's an infrastructure-free 12-foot pole. So this 12-foot pole, as you can see in your upper right-hand corner, is going to have a singular solar mount. So it's solar. It doesn't run off anything else. It runs off the sun. And there's plenty of sun to go around in Texas, right? So it's motion activated. It takes photos 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And as a vehicle passes through, it's taking 5 photos per second. So rest assured, it's going to be capturing all objects coming in and out of the premises, right? Not only that, though, let me go back here. We are an annual subscription And so with that, you are actually not owning the poles, which is fantastic news for you because you don't have to do the install, you don't have to do the ongoing maintenance, repairs, and we take care of any software upgrades that we do on the back end for you. So again, your cameras are always going to be up to date, whether it's the hardware or the software, because we, as our flock technicians, are the ones that are going to install it, and you, the customer, are essentially, if you want to view it as like a lease, you don't have to take care or worry about any of those items. Okay? Now, one thing too, our cameras don't just capture the license plate. We actually capture the description of the vehicle. We like to call it like a vehicle fingerprint. And what I mean by that is we're not just capturing the license plate. We're also capturing things like if it has stickers on the vehicle, if it has out-of-state plates, if it has a bike rack, if it has a hitch trailer, if it has tinted windows, things of that nature. Because not all criminals, I mean, I like to say criminals are dumb, but they are smart in certain ways where they see cameras, they want to go ahead and take their license plate off before entering the premises, right? So they're not caught. So if that's the case, you're going to be able to search for vehicles that are entering your complex or community that don't have a license plate, that maybe have a sticker. So again, we're not just capturing the license plate, we're capturing the fingerprint of the vehicle and the details, and that goes a long way as well. Is there any questions so far, John?
Any questions, folks? Nope, no questions so far.
Great. All right. And then last but not least, this is really a huge item that I feel you folks are going to see a lot of value in. Currently, right now, Flock and Cibola Police Department have a memorandum of understanding in place. And why that's so important is because any Flock pole that's installed in an HOA community is going to have what's called our real-time alerts. So what this does is it automatically alerts police of a vehicle that's been reported, that's been stolen, or even pops up on the NCIC list. And what the NCIC list is, it's a national database for law enforcement only, that essentially, is for wanted criminals, stolen vehicles, Amber Alerts, perhaps, and maybe John, you can speak to this a little bit more, but a vehicle that's been associated with a string of robberies, a felon on the run. If that vehicle enters your premises and our technology reads the license plate and it pops up on that NCIC list, what our cameras are going to do for you folks is they're going to automatically alert Cibola PD, automatically without anybody knowing, and they're going to get that alert, and then they're going to send a squad car accordingly as they see fit, because that perpetrator or that vehicle has entered the premises and has popped up on the list, causing a real-time alert to be sent to them. Does that make sense, or is there any questions on that?
Nope, no questions.
Okay, so just kind of reiterate, we have that in place with Cibola PD, which is fantastic, that MOU in place. So any community within Cibola is going to go ahead, and if they have block poles, they're going to be able to have the option to either turn on that feature or leave it off. It's up to you folks. Okay? All right. And then, of course, we are really huge on our ethics and privacy. So for that, Flock is obviously committed to maintaining principles and ethical approach to data collection. We are a cloud-based server, all right? So what happens, let's just play a hypothetical scenario out. A community within Cibola decides they want to sign up with Flock. Once you sign up with Flock and partner with us, what's going to happen is your board members, your elected officials, are going to go ahead and create a username and password, okay? Flock Safety does not have access to your cameras. We don't have access to your photos. It's all solely on you folks, the board members, okay? Now that login and password is going to allow you to utilize your personal portal. All photos are going to be stored for at least 30 days, and then after 30 days, it's going to be wiped out for two reasons. One, we don't want photos hanging around for longer than 30 days. It's just an invasion of privacy. And two, nobody's going to wait 30 days to report a crime. It just doesn't happen, all right? So the only individuals that have access to the photos and your personal portal are going to be those elected board members that have been chosen to be in that place of power, to be able to have those access to those photos and hand it over to officers when a crime does happen. Any questions there?
Any questions?
I have one question.
Yep. We got one question. Hang on a second, Ruben. Go ahead, man.
Videos are available on the community website. Can people logging into that download it from that site?
So the question is the videos that are available or the pictures on their website or their database, can other people log in and look at those photos or download them.
No. Unless, let's say that there's 5 board members, right? You create a username and password. Whoever you decide to share that username and password will be able to log in and take a look at your photos when you have to hand them over to officers. Now, every search that you make within your database, your portal, is going to be saved, okay? The reason why we do that is because we want to make sure that nobody's abusing power. You can't just log in if you're a board member and check to see when your husband or your wife has been coming in and out. You can't do that. It's I've just seen it happen, and people get in trouble. And you can't do that because basically what that's going to create is an audit trail, okay? And we're going to wonder, why are you making these frequent searches? There's no case number, there's no search reason, there's no a suspicious vehicle or a theft. So as long as you folks have trusted individuals on the board, there's really no problem, okay?
And on the law enforcement side, and Ruben, we have one neighborhood in the community, Lantana, that has Flock currently. If I remember correctly, I think it's their board treasurer that has access. He's the only one that has access. So we recently, in the last six straight months, they through Flock granted us access as law enforcement. So we weren't able to even see what was on their cameras as a police department without the board authorizing us to have access. Before that, we were having to reach out to the treasurer. He would do the search. He would send us some screenshots. And then we just working through Flock, we kind of figured a more convenient way so we weren't having to bother him all the time. And so they granted law enforcement access to it whenever we want. But outside of that, he's the only person even on their board, I think, that has access to it. So.
Exactly. And me, I would advise against that, only having one person have the login and password, just because no one can predict when a crime happens. So that board member may be on vacation. They may be out of town, whatever the case may be. So I usually like to tell my potential clients, maybe have 2 or 3 people that have the login. So in case someone's not home and a crime happens, that individual can go ahead and work with police like John was mentioning earlier. That make sense?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, no, so we really take privacy very seriously here at Flock. So we don't even have access. Cibola PD doesn't even have access unless you give them that rights. But we want to make sure that you folks have all the power and you're the only ones that can log in and view your photos when a crime does happen and you need to pass over that evidence. Okay. All right. No other questions?
Nope. No other questions?
Great. So what I want to do real quick is I'm going to jump over and switch screens, and I'm going to show you what it looks like to log in with your username and password to your portal. And we're going to take a look at the photos. Now, take this with a grain of salt. This is a demo account. Again, I can't log into somebody's personal account and show you like real time, but this is a demo account, but it's going to give you a good look and good grasp of what it would look like to utilize your own personal portal if you were to join Flock. So bear with me 1 second here. Let me jump on over here. Okay. Let me know when that pops up for you.
We see it.
Okay, great. Okay. So when you log in, this is what it's going to look like for you folks if you were to partner with us, okay? So you log in, and this is going to be your dashboard, okay? Now, as you can see here, these are the different search filters that we have. We make this as easy as possible and as user-friendly as possible because we don't want anybody getting tripped up or confused on how to work this, but rest assured that ongoing training and updates, if you want, are completely free to you with your annual subscription. Okay, so if you want to just get like a refresher on what's new with my dashboard, you just call your customer service rep and they'll be able to schedule a time with you just to kind of walk you through it. But here, let me just kind of give you a broad overview of what it looks like. So at the top left-hand corner, as you can see, I put in these search filters between September 4th and September 30th, okay? Now, as you can see, we have about 19,000 total objects, right? We're not going to comb through all of those objects, right? So if you wanted to go ahead and narrow it down to a specific car that we might have seen during a crime, we're going to go ahead and go to the left-hand side. So these are the different filters that we are obviously, always updating for you folks. And down here, you can see it says we have images with plates or images without plates. So that's a different filter that you can do right here, okay? Then we go down here to all tags, regular tags, temporary tags. Not everybody has a license plate, so we give that option too. And this is where we're going to get really detailed and granular with your search, right? So down here is going to be the state. what state license plate do they have? For the sake of the demonstration, folks, I'm just going to say Texas, but as you can see, we have all the states here, okay? So let me go ahead and just put Texas, all right? And then let's go ahead and scroll down a little bit more. Now we got the body of the vehicle. So let's just say, for example, I think it was an SUV that was heading out the premises during that crime. We're going to go ahead and click SUV, but you can see all the different options that we have. We have everything from a convertible down to a minivan, down to a semi-truck. We even have motorcycles, golf carts, and bicycles, okay? So again, we're not just catching vehicles, we're also catching these type of items as well. I mean, I don't know who would want to commit a crime in a convertible, but you never know, right? So we have that option as well. All right, so let's go down to the make of the car. All right, so I think it was an SUV. I think it was a Cadillac. It could have been a Dodge, right? So we'll pick those two, okay? And then down here, we're going to go ahead and go to the color of the vehicle. We got white, silver, gray, black, blue. For now, I'm just going to say it was a black SUV, right? And then this is where we have the key identifiers, right? Whether they had a bike rack, a top rack, bumper stickers, window stickers. That's going to get really detailed with the search if, you know, somebody said, I know that I saw they had stickers on their window. That's going to help you folks out too. And then last but not least, this is going to be an option. It's completely optional to you folks as a community of whether or not you want to put this. So when I sign up clients and they partner up with us, they have the option to send out an email to their community that essentially says, we have flock safety cameras being installed. When we make searches when crimes happen and we want to catch the criminal, we want to make sure that we're not wasting our time and searching our own residents, cars coming in. So what you can do is you can send an email out to your community and say, if you'd like your license plate uploaded so we can go ahead and click resident or non-resident, we can do that. It's completely up to you folks and your comfort level, whatever you want to do, but just know that's an option. And it just minimizes the gap of time of, you know, narrowing it down to that suspect that came in and out of your community. Any questions on that?
Questions? Nope, no questions.
All right. So based on all the searches that I had here, right? Black SUV, Texas license plate, could have been a Cadillac or a Dodge. We're going to go ahead and click update search. So we went down from 19,000 objects down to 14, okay? That really narrows it down. So again, we're taking about 5 pictures per second when the vehicle comes in and out. So if I click into here, it blows it up, and look how clean that shot is, right? We're getting the vehicle as it's going past. Let's go ahead and go backwards. So we're getting the vehicle as it's coming in. So boom, 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 boom. There we go. And it's gone. And we can go to this one. So we can do that. It even has a timestamp on it. So this one came through at 8:45. Here's the Cadillac here. So that was the Dodge, you know, based on the search. Here's the Cadillac. Now you're probably wondering, what does it look like at night, right? Well, we have the infrared technology. Okay, so when a car is coming through, and usually crimes do happen at night or early in the morning, right? Because criminals think no one's going to see me. And, you know, maybe they might not see our poles because we don't take flashes. Our cameras do not flash. It just goes off the infrared technology. But this is what it looks like at night. It lights the license plate up for you. Give me 1 second. And it's almost clear as day. But that's kind of how our cameras operate at nights, just to give you an idea. Again, taking 5 pictures per second. And there we go. So what questions do you have for me, folks, on that?
Any questions?
Or how does that look? Thoughts, questions, concerns?
No questions, lots of head nodding, so.
I have a question.
Oh,
I like head nodding.
Hang on, one question.
How is it identifying the vehicle? Because I'm curious, I'm guessing it's using some kind of AI to figure out what the vehicle.
So the question is, how is it identifying the vehicle? I guess make and model is, and it, I know there's some AI running in the background probably, but if you could expand on that a little bit.
How are we identifying the vehicle?
Yes, like make and model for the search.
Yeah, that's a good question, and it has nothing to do with AI. It's all about our product engineering team, which is well above my pay grade. That's why they get paid the huge bucks. Those guys are literally inputting and working around the clock, updating these. So they're putting in within the technology of the camera to recognize, I don't know what type of code they use. Again, that's above my pay grade. But they are working constantly around the clock to input different plates, different stickers, things of that nature. It's all within the code and the technology of the camera. I don't have that explanation. I can find that out for you, but yeah, well above my pay grade.
So Ruben, I remember some from our law enforcement demo we had, and Kate talked about how the system can kind of learn. So obviously sometimes there's mistakes, and so you have the option to let the system know that that's the wrong vehicle, and it kind of helps them learn that. So am I stating that correctly?
Yes, but you, the user, would have to input that information yourself. So it doesn't learn on its own. You have to input that information that it was the wrong vehicle. So then it learns that time. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. It doesn't just do it on its own. You would have to input that information in order for it to learn the next time.
Okay. And I've only seen a few mistakes. We've actually searched this a lot because it's around the state and we have access to a lot of different cameras. And we've only found a few where the vehicle was not accurate. And Ruben's correct. I forgot about that part. You send a report in and say, hey, this wasn't a Chevy, it was a GMC or something, or its body style is very similar, but maybe the make is not exactly right, or sometimes the color is a little bit off because of the sunlight or something like that. And so you can help correct that. And we've done that a couple of times. So, and we have one more question. Yes, ma'am.
So this technology is exclusive for vehicles, and as opposed to some of the crime that we're kind of seeing in this area, at least to my knowledge, is people on foot that are kind of going into driveways and checking vehicles.
Right.
So it only works with vehicles. Is that correct?
Yeah, so her question is, the technology only works with vehicles, not capturing any people that's coming in on foot, if they're coming into the neighborhood on foot to commit crimes?
No, so it's mainly, it's a vehicle fingerprint and the license plate, but it does capture people on bikes. It does capture an individual coming into the premises if they're coming in at or around the near time that a vehicle is coming through. It'll catch the person, but no, if a person's just walking in, it's not going to capture them. But one statistic to remember, and I'm not sure who I'm speaking to, but this is obviously going to be for the whole group, is that when our poles are installed, automatically in the community, crime is dropped by 35% just because we have that presence of the 12-foot poles. So it really deters crime just by having them installed there and having that presence. So that's also something to kind of keep in mind too. But catching people on foot, that's not what our Sparrow does. We do have another camera that's known as our Condor. Okay, this Condor is a 360, 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week video surveillance. All right, and what it does is it goes on an existing pole within your community that's at least 12 feet to 16 feet high in between there. Now, what this camera does, again, it's a 360 view, 24 hours, 7 days a week. You install it on that pole, and that's going to be able to work with the license plate reading camera to capture individuals that are coming in by foot. So we do have that option. We do have that camera. But specifically right now, we're just speaking to the license plate reading, but we do have that option.
And man, when you reference some of the crime that's in what we're seeing in our area, where yes, they are on foot, you are right. But what we found is they always have a vehicle that comes and drops them off somewhere. The vehicle might be sitting down the street, blacked out, where nobody can see it with the lights off, and then they'll walk up driveway to driveway to driveway. But usually when we go back to people's home security systems, we can end up spotting that vehicle or a vehicle we think was involved. But there's usually some, because our neighborhoods are too big for them just to drop them off at the entrance or a side street and have them, walk in. There's usually some sort of vehicle somewhere in the neighborhood that's associated with how they're getting there and then leaving. So, because they want to be able to get out quickly too. So.
Exactly. And yeah, that's a very great point. And yeah, we don't consider other video surveillance cameras like Ring or Arlo or Nest as competitors because they're not. They don't do the same thing. We actually view them as use that evidence that you get from your neighbor's camera and pair it with the license plate reading camera because that's going to make officers' jobs so much easier and be able to catch the criminal. So yeah, that's a good point, John.
One more question.
Yeah, please.
The flock, is it packaged as the cameras and everything plus an internet service provider, or does the community have to get an ISP separate from that?
Okay, so is the flock system packaged together with the camera and the connectivity, so the ISP or internet service provider, however it connects back, is that included with the package of the camera, or does the neighborhood have to do anything on their end to get that set up?
We make it very easy and streamlined. You don't need any of that. It's all web-based. So we run off the cloud. So basically, as long as you have a smart device, a laptop, iPad, whatever the case may be, and you have your username and login, all you need to do is have that. You're going to be able to log in from anywhere to this portal that you see up here and be able to hand over that evidence when a crime does happen. So again, it's nothing, we're very easy. I mean, we just plug in the poles, it runs off solar, you create your own username and password, and you have access to it, and that's how you have access to it.
Then how does the camera communicate with the cloud? I'll just expand on that question. The camera itself, how does it send the information through?
It's just on a rolling 30-day basis. It's just automatically sending it every day. We have a smart center based out of Atlanta, Georgia. Again, I don't know exactly how they do that, but at the end of the day, it's all off the cloud. The cameras are all on that server, and you only have access to your cameras with your login. So I'm not sure on exactly how they do it, John, but
okay.
That's how it's done. Yeah, that's how it's done. I can find out that answer for you,
I think it's through a cellular, if I remember correctly. I think they have like a cellular card in them that goes through a local.
Yeah, you the customer won't need to worry about that though.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's something we all take on the back end.
It's all self-contained.
Yep.
Anything else?
So, as it relates to investigations, and I know a lot of times comes up the question about, hey, the FBI asked for this, and what levels of permissions do they go through? Does that make sense? So, is that, if it became part of a federal investigation?
So normally they would work with the local law enforcement. I don't know that, because they probably would know what we have in the area as far as cameras and its capabilities. So if they were doing some sort of investigation like that, generally they would reach out to us and say, we're looking into this. Is there any way that you can help us? But if for some reason they saw the cameras, it would be the same way. They would probably do just like us. They would try to reach out to somebody in the neighborhood. And again, it's the neighborhood's data. So you can choose not to release it if you don't want to. It's kind of my perception of it. It's really you own the camera, you own the information. So it's really the neighborhood's choice. Same reason why we would have to approach you. If Saratoga decided to put one of these into their neighborhood, once they were installed, we would reach out and say, would you be willing to share these with the Cibolo PD? That way we don't have to contact you if we think something happened in the neighborhood. We can just go into the database and look at the same information that you would have access to for that 30-day time period. And so you have to have that agreement on file. So it'd be the same thing if any other law enforcement reached out wanting to look at your cameras.
Yes, and to touch on that point too, kind of a funny story, but there's this show on A&E called The First 48, and essentially what it is it follows homicide detectives on crimes, and they have to get a lead within the first 48 hours, otherwise the case drops to 50% being solved. So I'm watching this show the other night, and they are looking through cameras, and I'm looking on these cameras look really familiar to me. Well, they said, okay, we have flock cameras. They were using flock cameras, and then they knew where the vehicle had entered into that HOA community. And so their next step was to get in touch with the HOA board to see if the board would allow them to gain access to their cameras so they could pull up photos of when that vehicle entered the premises. So that was pretty interesting and pretty cool to see the company I work for on this, major television show using our cameras and system. But to John's point, and to answer that question, it all goes through you folks. They would have to ask you folks for permission because you own the data, you own the photos, it's your account.
Anything else? Okay, I think we'll move on, Ruben.
That's essentially it for me.
Okay.
That's essentially it. Just wanted to walk you through a few slides, show you the actual portal, and then obviously answer any and all questions. So that's essentially it on my end, unless you folks had something else for me or wanted to know more.
Anything else? Okay. Ruben, we have a sign-in sheet where everybody signed in, so what we'll do is we'll make sure that I'll send a follow-up, or we'll send out your information to everybody that's on the sign-in sheet, make sure they know how to get in touch with you, because I've got all that contact, so we'll make sure we share it with the group, so if they have any more specific questions, or if something comes up that they think of later on, or if a neighborhood is interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So just reach me by email. I'm always checking my email, whether I'm at my desk or out and about. My fiance doesn't like it, but hey, I got to work. That's why I'm here on a Saturday. Feel free to reach out to me, folks. I think I gave John an email of like a recap or resources page, a couple handouts about our privacy ethics, all the good stuff that a board member would want to know. But again, I'm an open book. You guys can reach out to me, and if you're interested, we can set up a time where we can talk directly about your community and how we can help and partner up.
Okay. Anything else?
All right.
Okay, Ruben, thank you for your time. I appreciate you talking to us today, and I think that's it. And we'll make sure we get the information sent out to the group.
All right, folks. You all have a good weekend, and hopefully we'll all be talking soon. You take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.
Anybody need a short break just before we get started on the neighborhood watch? Okay. Take 5-minute stretch your legs break, and then we'll get started with the neighborhood watch stuff from Rick Morellis.
Yeah, we need to break before he starts.
There's a clicker right there.
Good questions. Yeah. So, yeah, please get it started. I know, Sanchez. She's got some connections with some other people who tell me that they've never watched personal, presentation. A lot of them that seemed like this area, they would come out and say, I think Lieutenant Wells knows the representative in this area. Yeah. So I said,
Law enforcement, Kate Rusky, she's actually good friends with Josh Apgar's wife. They went to high school together or something.
Okay.
But she does most of the law enforcement stuff.
Oh, okay.
But she's also our direct contact, so she can help us get in touch with anybody. Like I said, I'm kind of surprised he's out in California because he handles Texas and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
But he lives out there, so.
Well, that's what I told him too. I said, look, I didn't know much
Nicole
about
is actually supposed to get a hold of somebody, and
and I said, I'll be honest, my experience was like, tell us when and where. I said, so I know they've become pretty popular. I said, but my experience is I think they will come out.
Yeah, I mean,
So
they got to work through the permitting with the city.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
that's it.
We've got all those connections to work on that stuff deeper as well.
Yeah.
Just for putting holes
That's
in.
what I told them. So I said, I think they'll come out and they probably, I said, I think this is a good thing for you all to be able to see a little bit about the product, maybe go online, take a look at some of the paperwork you gave them, and I said, and then from there, make a determination if y'all are interested in it. I said, we're not in the business of telling you who to use. I can that lady works for the management company. She just said she knows people with fly. But she doesn't work for a management company in this city. She works for a management. So I guess she said around San Antonio. She said so.
And I think a lot of the ones that are managed here, they're managed in San Antonio. I don't know if we have. I don't know if we have.
I don't know. She said, she told me, she said, do you know, I know most of them because I guess she's friends with the gentleman on campus. I think that did the presentation with HOAs. Okay. So she came to him, but I guess she was talking to people about, opportunity. She said a lot of people at the same time, they need them. So she said, but we got them and if we were successful, I said, well, you might want to share that with some of them. I think that's one thing that's probably.
Well, I know they're heavily used. I mean, Chris has got a bunch of them in White Settlement.
Oh, yeah.
Always posted on social media.
They're all over down in Fort Worth.
They had one the other day. Just 2 to 3 days ago, they caught some felon or something, or somebody doing something. It was their flock camera. They caught it for them.
It's the game in town in Dallas, Fort Worth. Yeah. The whole damn Metroplex. You know what I mean?
Sam Marcus I think that's one of our closest is.
Yeah.
Little bitty town of Livonia down here, they got 3 of them.
Yeah, that's what she said. She said Laverne, she said they have them. She told me that.
Mr. Reed wants to do it for the city. I had them build out, I'll send it to you. Kate built out a 3-step plan for us to get like 18 or 20.
Councilwoman Cunningham.
No, the flock people.
Oh.
Flock people. I work with flock and I had them build out like a 3-step program.
Yeah. No, I know her first name was Kate, but she said she wants to get them too.
Oh, Katie?
Yeah, she said she wants to get them. She said, I want to get them, but, trying to find money. She said, but I know we want to start with the city buildings. I said, honestly, that's always the jump start for us. That's something that we're using. So they figure, oh, PD must be tired of doing.
Yeah, the first phase has one like in each city limits on 78, city limits in 1103. It catches all of the ingress routes into the city. Phase 2 comes a little farther in, and then the final phase has like 4 of them downtown, HEB and Walmart, and the bigger intersections. But yeah, they sat down and worked all that through. It's about 4 or 5 months ago, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
Mr. Reed kind of wanted to see what that was in last year's budget, how much it would cost.
Yeah.
Neighborhoods are higher, but I mean, consider making it it's a service.
Especially that downtown area.
Oh yeah.
Man, that would be, I mean, it's not a big downtown. That would be a game changer for them. You got the events. I know I went out there last week. I saw they had the farmers market or market out there. So that'd be, I mean, we don't have a lot of officers.
Well, there's no telling how many stolen vehicles are coming through. 78 between San Antonio and Seguin, especially with I-10 shut down right now.
Yeah.
And that traffic is at least doubled out there.
Compare where I live, they put them at sure their biggest intersection. They don't have but they might be at 45,000 residents now. Back when I lived there, it was like 35,000 residents, and we were between Irving and Louisville. And we had them in ours. PD would pick them off all day, stolen cars coming in. You know, picking up people from Dallas might put out warning people, and PD would just be snatching them. It kept the community safe. The community was like, they came back in, they'd go to council and say, this is kind of what it did. It gives us another layer of protection in our city. You know, people know that we're checking them, so guys go, don't go through there, man. You got a stolen car, they're gonna pop you. So yeah, it was. So I think it can't do anything else but help, especially with some of the arteries that we got. We don't have a lot of arteries. Yeah. I mean, Yep.
Yeah, I think they're costing, I think they're costing like it was for one camera. I think it boils down to $10 a day per camera.
Sneaky back roads either.
I know they kind of went up on the price, so I think it's $3,500. I mean, they got to pay for the poles.
Yeah.
That's a one-time fee for the poles.
Okay, everyone, if you want to start making it back to your seats, we can get the next portion of the presentation started.
You have to bend over for that. Would you rather use the other one?
Hello? Usually I don't need a microphone. I can project.
Yeah, I guess folks that said they're kind of hard of hearing. So when I was up here talking, she was like, "You're kind of tall, and could you bend down closer to the mic? Because I can't really hear you." So
I don't usually use mics. I hate podiums, so I usually am out here.
well, they said Tim was standing over here, and he was talking loud, and it was still picking it up.
Was it? Okay.
For the recording. So yeah, I know you have a pretty loud. You're like me, you have a loud voice.
Yeah, I just project.
Okay. I think as long as you're projecting good, so.
Yeah, I should be okay. So I got 2 slideshows I'm going to do since I have a captive audience.
Okay.
And eventually I'll get the neighborhood watch. I think so. Am I the last one?
I think they want to talk about the social media newsletters or something.
Okay.
Already, so I know they had a lot of them.
I took some out of that.
I'm ready.
So.
Okay, everyone. Okay, everyone, we're going to get started here. Thank you all for coming. I am Rick Mireles. I am the Public Relations and Crime Prevention Officer for the Cibolo Police Department. You all thought you were going to talk about Neighborhood Watch. We will get to that eventually, but because I have a captive audience and I have the mic and you have to listen to everything I have to say, I'm going to give you a quick briefing on the 9 p.m. routine. The 9 p.m. routine, that's just the name of it. The 9 p.m. routine can be done anytime during the day. However, for most people that work during the day and go to sleep at night, 9 p.m. is a good time, is a time that we put on it to, hey, go secure your house. My clicker is not working, Tracy.
Tracy.
Point at the laptop, is that how we do that? Okay, so we're gonna do something a little different. You got me? Okay, slide. Okay, so the biggest reported crime in the city of Cibolo is theft. We have people coming from outside of our community, they're coming into Cibolo, and they're stealing from us. Why? Because they view us as a soft target. Why do they view us as a soft target? Because people are not locking their doors at night. That is one of the biggest reasons, and I want to bring it to your attention that we need to harden ourselves against these guys that are coming in and taking our stuff. And what are they after? These are crimes of opportunity. They're after everything that we are leaving unsecure. We also run initiative during certain seasons, spring, summertime, when the weather's nice, because when the weather is nice, the bad guys are usually out at night. And what are they taking from us? They're taking things, anything of value, actually. It doesn't, money, laptop, guns. By the way, your vehicle makes a very poor gun locker. Your identifying information. They'll take your cell phone charger. If they see it and they can get it, they're going to take it. Maybe they'll even take the vehicle itself. That happens on occasions. Basically, anything they find of value. Never underestimate the power of human laziness. What we have is a group of typically males, late teens, early 20s, and they're just walking around 2, 4 in the morning, and they're just popping door handles, seeing which one's going to open. And then they come to one, pop, crime of opportunity just happened. Slide.
Really quick, as Rick talks about that, one of the things I want you to be cognizant of is your garage door openers. When you put your garage door openers in your vehicles and you're leaving them there, they typically will take their garage door opener. What do you think is happening next? Next, your home is burglarized because they're going to come back the next day to burglarize your home. So leaving your garage door opener on your visor is not a great thing to do. You have to find somewhere to secure them, take them with you, or keep them locked up or somewhere secure in your vehicle, but when they're out in the open, they'll piggyback off that and they're going to hit your house.
Slide. Okay. Okay, there's the next one. Okay, as I was saying, so, by the way, I don't really mirror myself to the slide, so I kind of get ahead of myself, but yes, these are crimes of opportunity. They're just cruising through the neighborhood at night and just seeing which vehicles are there. I myself, as I said, I am the crime prevention guy, correct? I have 5 vehicles in my home. I have mine, my wife's, my daughter, my son, my mother-in-law. I decided to do a go and see one night and see how many of those vehicles were actually locked. How many of those vehicles do you think were locked? 1. Which one whose do you think it was? Mine. No, mine. Mine was the one that locked. I went to 4 of the 5 vehicles were unlocked. I went to my wife's first off, click, okay, there's one, and boom, and I could not believe it. My own home. So it does happen. I mean, we do it to ourselves. Why do we do it to ourselves? Because I'm very proud of this fact, we are the 28th safest city in the state of Texas. And what is the cost of that? We get comfortable. Even lazy, I'll say. Because a certain kind of person lives here in Cibolo. We're very proud of our community. We work hard for the things we have, and other people want to come and take what we have for free. And they know, and because we're safe, we get into that sense of complacency, we get into a rhythm. And the bad guys are going to come and they're going to do it. They're definitely not going to steal in their own neighborhoods, I'll tell you that. Because if you're walking around in the middle of the night looking to steal from your own neighborhood, something bad's going to happen to them. We, usually us, I know I'm sleeping at night. That's where I'm at. That's where most of you are at, I imagine. Slide. Okay, just real quick, this is, for further bathroom reading, if you guys are interested, this is one of the biggest reported crimes here, burglary of a vehicle. Any person commits an offense without the effective consent, enters your car and takes what belongs to you, and they take it for themselves. So this is one of the biggest crimes. They tend to come in waves. Group of guys come in off the I-35, pick a subdivision, They hit the subdivision, and then they are gone. It happens very fast. Slide. This video is not working. Go ahead and slide. Yeah. So, very preventable crime. As I said, do not underestimate the power of human laziness, because 82% of the burglary of motor vehicles that reported to the Cibolo Police Department were not forced. They just popped the lock. They didn't break. They didn't smash a window. They weren't popping the door locks off. They didn't cause any damage to the vehicle. I myself have responded to crimes. There was no signs of forced entry. How did they get in? Well, I left my car door unlocked. No judgment, but do not make it easy for these guys. You want to harden yourselves, your vehicles. You know, remember, people forget for some reason. I don't know why, but they forget to close the garage doors at night. Yes, ma'am. Question? I wouldn't say that there's neighborhoods that are targeted more than others. These guys come in, they're already familiar with Cibolo already. They've been here more than once. They definitely don't hit the same places twice. But I wouldn't say, I'm not going to say, you know, the Saratoga or the Landmark Point, because they're closer to 35, is more susceptible than, say, where I live in Thistle Creek. I'm a little more buried into the city, but I'm still going to harden what I own against theft. So the answer to your question, the short answer is no. There's no neighborhood that is more susceptible than another. So, as a visual, this is the stuff that they are looking for. You're identifying information, definitely guns, cash, anything of value. So, lock, take, hide. Lock your car doors, lock your home. If you hide your belongings within your vehicle, and if you can't hide, or take it with you. Do not make it easy for these guys to come steal from you. 9 p.m. routine. Please follow us on social media. We're posting every so often. Like I said, you're a captive audience, so I'm going to put that out to you guys right now. Tell your friends, forward it out to everybody you know. Doesn't have to be done at 9 o'clock. Any time of day is fine. All right. That's a nice. Anybody have any questions concerning burglary of a motor vehicle, thefts, or anything like that? Nope. Okay.
Just give you a small caveat. I wish I had an officer to put on every block. I said this to the Citizen Police Academy last week.
Okay.
We wish we did. We don't. These crimes take less than a few minutes to happen, right? Many of the individuals who perpetrate these crimes are young juveniles to young adults. And many of them sometimes are in a car, 3 or 4 people, and they will step out on the street, they'll check door handles. It's amazing that when they come across vehicles that are unlocked, that they keep moving. It's amazing when they come across vehicles with value that are not in plain view, they keep moving. So there's a way, as Rick talked about, we can harden our target, we can keep our community safe, right, by doing those things. So when we talk about the 9 p.m. check, whether you want to do it in the morning, whether you want to do it in the evening, we would encourage you to just make sure you're checking your property, and you know what, remind your neighbors of that. This is what we'll talk about later when we talk about neighborhood watch group as we get into this, and the importance of being my brother and sister keeper. Okay, real quick, who here is from Thistle Creek? I'm the only one. That is so sad. Okay, anyhow. Okay, neighborhood watch. How many here have been to the Citizens Police Academy? I know you. Okay, nobody has been to the Citizens Police Academy. I'm very sad at that too. Okay, so if you'd been to the Citizens Police Academy, you would have got this briefing. We are a community policing organization. So what does that mean? It means that we work with our residents to help solve and control crime. So we cannot arrest our way out of problems, we cannot ticket our way out of problems, and we definitely cannot be everywhere at once. So it is our philosophy to work with our residents to police ourselves. I do live here in Cibolo. This is my community, so I definitely have a vested interest in what happens here. I'm very passionate about it, part of the reason why I'm in this job, and so I'm going to work with you guys, and we're going to talk about Neighborhood Watch. Slide. Okay, so Neighborhood Watch program agenda, go and just keep clicking. I'm going to give you just a brief roadmap of what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about what is it, possible program benefits. I know the part that everyone is concerned is the cost, because there is a cost related. It is not for free, and I imagine that the HOAs do not pay for it, although we can ask our friend over here. The HOAs do not pay for it, so that's a cost that you, the resident, are going to have to burden. How to get it started, some associated paperwork that may be involved with it.
signage that we in the Cibolo Police Department have thought that would be most beneficial for our particular communities because it's specific to us, and supplemental programs that are ran by the Cibolo Police Department that we offer to our residents. Go ahead. And most importantly, what is our role and what is your role? I will tell you right now, kind of getting a little bit ahead of myself, is neighborhood watch programs are dependent upon the residents to do their part. I will do my part. I'm here right now, and we will come out and we can talk about do residential crime inspections, how to harden targets, training what to look for, anomalies within your neighborhoods. Everybody has their normal in their neighborhood, right? And then something something abnormal comes out, and then everybody loses their minds. And my personal favorite, Paul Blart Mall Cop, what we're going to talk about. Your responsibility is to observe, detect, and report. That's the responsibility of you. But the organization is only going to be as good as the people that are a part of it. Go ahead and slide. Okay, so Neighborhood Watch, what is it? Yes, it primarily has an emphasis on crime prevention, but it can be so much more. Here in the city of Cibolo, our main focus is what? Is community, getting people out, getting people to know each other. This Tuesday at 6 p.m. is what? National Night Out, one of our flagship programs. Now, our next initiative now is Neighborhood Watches. But the Neighborhood Watch is actually your program. This is for you guys to get out and to get to know one another and to build those communities and to build those relationships. It can be so much more, messaging for, national disaster. Everybody remember Snowvid? Ever remember that? You either bunkered up in your house. Some people got out, and the best of our people got out that day. We saw some good things that were mixed in with a lot of bad during that time. Block parties. Anybody ever heard of neighborhood block parties? Neighborhood watch block parties? So it can be more than an emphasis on crime prevention. It can be us coming out and just getting to know one another. Nowadays in 2023, it's a little bit harder because we're all sucked into our phones and our social media. We don't even have to leave to go shopping anymore. So we want this to be so much more than just what it is of emphasis on crime prevention. Go ahead, slide. As I said, we are one of the safest cities in the state of Texas, something that is a credit to all of us here because of the work that we do and because of what you're doing today and right now. So as I said, a lot of people know this, we tout it, bad guys know it, which makes us a soft target, and we don't want to make us a soft target anymore. I definitely want to get to number one, and with your dedication and hard work, I hope to get there. Go ahead, slide. All right, what are our current options for getting information and for interacting with each other? What is that? Anybody have any idea? Just real quick. How do we communicate?
Social media.
Social media, slide. Oh my God! Got it. Something else, what else? Like I said, I like to be interactive. I want to keep you guys engaged. Emails, go ahead, keep going, slide. Some of you guys are familiar with the Ring doorbell cameras. That's how you get your information. That's how we get a lot of information also. Go ahead, slide. A lot of these other social media apps, and go ahead, one more. Old school. Believe it or not, it still works. I do kind of like it. Might upset some of your neighbors, but this is typical ways we get our information. And with Neighborhood Watch, and with an emphasis on community engagement and on you guys getting out and knowing your neighbors, I'm going to talk about the baseline within your communities. So like I said, I live in Thistle Creek. I know my baseline. So you guys live in your neighborhood. So if you see the quote-unquote suspicious vehicle across the street, is it a suspicious vehicle or is it someone's family visiting from out of town? And let's be honest, what's that?
Hard to tell.
Hard to tell, right? And let's be honest, we all have those family members that, maybe they're a little shady, they come visit us. You're laughing over there, so So, is it, who is it? Who is that car? Have I responded to suspicious vehicle calls in neighborhoods? Absolutely I have. Most of them was nothing, but I'm obligated to go and investigate those calls. I think one out of I don't know how many was actually something. But that's up to you guys to know your neighbors, to know what's going on, and to be aware of what's going on. You guys are the eyes and ears. You guys are the force multipliers. You can put those calls into us. We'll go investigate. But we're also asking you guys to know who your neighbors are and to know what's going on.
So how many of you all, with a suspicious vehicle in your neighborhood, suspicious person in your neighborhood, have called the police? How many of y'all think, well, I'm bothering the police, right? They have more things to do. Cops become police officers because we're nosy neighbors too, right? We get this job because we want to know. We're encouraging you, call us, that's why we're here. Report. So there's nothing too important that you can call your local police department about. So then we want to make sure when we talk about these neighborhood watch groups that gets passed along to the community. We won't know, we can't help you if we're not informed.
Go ahead, slide. Okay, so I'm going to touch on this because this does happen. Facebook is not the place to report crimes, FYI. It does happen, and when I do receive those tips, I will take a screenshot and I will forward it off to my CID, Criminal Investigations Division. They will get those. But I do not recommend you using Facebook because I do not monitor it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It is not the place to report crimes. The place to report crimes would be calling dispatch, and I'll provide that number to you. I have plenty of information back here at the end of this briefing. You can come talk to me. We can talk about who to call, and I have some neighborhood watch information to pass out to you at the end of this briefing. But I go off duty, and so does my partner. And if you do report a crime or tip to Facebook, we're going to lose the initiative on that. It can be up to several hours. So if you have something actively going on right now, and it's a weekend on Saturday at 3 in the morning, there's nobody monitoring that, FYI. Go ahead, slide. So this is not the way to go. If you do report a tip, I will take it. I will run with it. Like I said, I've gotten tips before. I got a tip. I got a tip of a serial killer loose in Cibolo one time. I am not going to end up on a Netflix documentary, so I took that and I forwarded it to CID. Remember that one? And I forwarded it to CID, and our CID lieutenant ran with it. It was a hoax, but I take everything seriously. So if you pass something to me, I take it seriously, and it's going. Slide. Okay, let's talk about the possible program benefits. The point of this slide here is to show a bunch of people. They're all on their phones, yes, but they're all communicating with each other. Slide. All right, possible benefits. Possible is you can get a greater sense of security because we have this neighborhood watch program. Remember, it's going to be more than just putting up a sign on the street that says, hey, we have a neighborhood watch. No, the point of this is to get you guys involved, interacting with each other, and to have those networks and it's open lines of communication. Therefore, we have more eyes and ears on the street and more tips coming our way to deter crime. All right, it's possible that we can reduce crime victimhood within our streets. I'm not going to promise you that, but that is the objective. That's the way we want to go. Slide. And we can come out, either myself, my partner, another officer, maybe even the chief of police. We can come out and we can do presentation. I won't promise he has a lot of things he's got to do, so I'm not going to promise his time. But we can come out and we can talk about target hardening. I can talk more about the 9 p.m. routine. I will invite you to our Citizens Police Academy. I keep putting that out there. Hint, hint, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. And we can talk about things we can do to keep ourselves safe. And we can also talk about things that are affecting you within your community specific. Anybody here from Steel Creek? Nobody here from Steel Creek. Okay, slide. And I said, picking out anomalies that happen in your neighborhood. You get a kid walking down your street, you've never seen him before. To you, that's an anomaly. Well, maybe you've been off work that day and that kid walks up and down that street every day at 3 o'clock because that's when Watts Elementary lets out. But for some reason, this is the first time you've ever seen him, and now it's a suspicious kid. Is it really a suspicious kid? Or is he? Do you still check him out? And if you called the police, we are obligated to go and investigate every call to a resolution, whatever it may be. I've been out where I've had to check out somebody, hey, I got a call about you, you fit the description. Was it suspicious or is it not? And that's up to us to investigate it. Go ahead, slide. Okay, so we can offer more information. We just recently started putting out our crime stats on our Cibolo Facebook page. We're working with our chief of police to get a little more in depth on that, and so that's going to be a work in progress as to what we should release to our public. But we are starting to put our crime stats out to let you know what's going on within your city. Slide. Okay, and we want to talk about things that affect you and your neighborhood. What's going on in Steel Creek may not affect someone that's going on in Deer Creek or Thistle Creek or Saratoga or wherever. We got to tailor our police response to the residents that we're talking to. And we can put up signs and stickers in your car, because that's what's really Neighborhood Watch is famous for, those famous Neighborhood Watch signs that are going up. We can put those up, and we want to tailor those signs specifically to us, to who you can call. In the event of emergency, who are you going to call? What's the number? 911. What if it's a non-emergent number? Just you have a gee whiz question. No. Anybody here know the number to dispatch? I know you do. What's the number to dispatch, sir?
210 and 7 other digits.
Correct. And we will make sure that you guys have that. Now, if it's an emergency, 911 is always the one to call, but what are the non-emergent numbers? What's my number? What if you just have a gee whiz question that you want to know? I'm the crime prevention, I'm the public relations officer. I am that voice on the other side of the phone. You have a question that you just need an answer to. You can't always get a hold of the chief of police or Lieutenant Wells here. This is why I'm here, so that we can talk and we can have those relationships. We can have that transparency and accountability. Slide. As I said, and address issues so we can build mutual trust and transparency and accountability. I am the police department. You are the residents. But I wasn't born a police officer. Nobody here was born a police officer. We are public, just like you guys are. This isn't a place of royalty. This is my community, and I'm interested, and I have skin in the game just like you do. Okay, what it is not. I'm glad that we had that talk over there about what it is not. It is not a vigilante group. It does not give you the right to go out and start actively patrolling like this is, Kandahar or Afghanistan. And it is not 100% guaranteed that there will not be crime. We can't promise that. We want to have an emphasis on crime deterrence and prevention and community relationships, but there's no guarantee that there will be zero crime. Slide. And this is programmed for you guys. The work, this is the hard part. The work is going to be incumbent upon you. There has to be a block captain. That person has to be able to generate interest in it and have those meetings. And wherever the meeting is, I will come to your house. I do parties, I do weddings, I do bar mitzvahs. You having a house party, hey, I'll come over and we'll talk crime prevention. It'll probably be a real boring party, but it'll be a party nonetheless. But I will come to you and we can talk about things that are important to you. So real quick, HOAs, apples and oranges. We do not enforce HOA rules. So whatever your HOA rules are, we're not there for that. We're there for the laws of the state of Texas and the city ordinances of Civil Law. So we really don't have a whole heck of a lot. I'm sorry, I'm pointing at you over there. we don't have a whole heck of a lot of. We do have interaction, but not a whole lot. They're a separate entity. This is a neighborhood watch between the residents in your communities and us. But it is on you guys. I keep hitting that. It is on you guys to do the work, to build that interest, set up a block captain. You guys set the agenda, and we will support. I will come out to you. But this is going to be a partnership. It's just not going to be Civil Police Department by itself getting the group together. It's going to be you guys, and we're happy to be part of your Neighborhood Watch program.
And why that's important to me is as we continue to grow the police department, we're working with various counties to our community. It's important for me as we grow so you know the officers who are patrolling your neighborhoods, and that the officers who are patrolling your neighborhoods know you, and that we're tailoring this geographic policing model, if you will, that people talk about in law enforcement to meet the needs of every community. Saratoga may have one challenge, and their community may be different than Turner Stone, could be different than Deer Creek. Our communities in our city are unique. And it's important for us to have services that meets the needs of the community. So as we do these things, and you start neighborhood watch groups, it gives our officers that interface, face-to-face meeting with you, to talk about crime that's occurring in the city, to hear about the challenges in your community, and then to make sure we're taking that back to our police leadership team and officers to find the ways to continue to build on that. But it is a 50-50 relationship. But what I love most about it, it starts with what every neighborhood thrives on, the art of communication. And I want to make sure that your officers are communicating with you and you're communicating with them so we meet your needs.
Go ahead, slide. By the way, last thing, it is not for you to go out and take those risks. If you see something going on, That's for us to do. We took on the job. We're going to take on those risks. You have a lot of questions, and I'd be happy to answer them, not in this forum, but, back there, because there's always the what if. Well, what if this happened? What if that happens? There's 10,000 scenarios, and I can't presume to know them all. But Neighborhood Watch is not for you to go out and actively get involved and take the risk. It is for you to observe, detect, and report to us. Like I said, there's always the one scenario that says, well, and that's forcing me to act. I get it. We can have that conversation. But for right now, I just want to skim over the top of Neighborhood Watch. And it is not for you to actively get involved and to stop that crime in progress. Slide. Okay, associated cost, because this is not for free. Neighborhood Watch is a copyright. It is a business, first and foremost, there are a lot of things that are copyrighted. So that's something that you have to be prepared to take on. HOAs are not going to pay for that. Neither will the Cibolo Police Department. It's not in our budget. Maybe that'll change later. But for right now, you, as the residents, have to be prepared to take on that cost. I do have a cost listing in the back that's a little more detailed. There are registration fees that go along with to register with the Neighborhood Watch organization and to get all the paraphernalia that they sell, so you can say, hey, we're a Neighborhood Watch organization. I do have some books in the back that you guys can thumb through. Slide. I have this material back there. This property, the Cibolo PD, is not for handout. It's for you guys can look through it and see if you're interested in buying. You don't buy it from us, by the way, and this is not endorsement of a product. But like I said, these things are not for free. Slide. Okay, assembling your Neighborhood Watch program. Is there even an interest within your community? I hope that there is, but that's going to be incumbent upon the person, block captain, I don't want to say HOA, excuse me for that, but it's going to be upon you guys to figure out, is this something that our residents even want to do? Slide. And then who's going to lead that program? Because it's not going to be us. We're not going to be the leaders proper. That's going to be you, as I keep saying. Slide. And what's going to be your interest and what's your intent of starting a Neighborhood Watch program? Crime deterrence, I know, but we're going to talk about, okay, what is your intent? Do you guys just want to Neighborhood Watch? Do you guys want to be more community engaged? Do you guys want to work with the police more and more? What is your intent, and we can get to the bottom of that. Slide. And then you, and we will too, but it's going to be more about you guys, advertise and get the word out there and get people to the venues that you guys are going to be at, whether it be at somebody's house, whether it be at your HOA, your subdivision pool house or clubhouse or whatever it is you have, or some venue, and I will come and we will meet you there. Slide. Okay, there is some paperwork. It's not required. I don't know how much of your personal information you want to give to a complete stranger, but hopefully you guys have developed those relationships. What we have is data sheets, information. Slide. This is information that you guys would, if you want to. I'm not pushing on and say you have to do it, but it's just an example of, go ahead and slide, just take a look, just information that you guys put and you guys share with each other. It is a lot of personal, what we call PII, personally identifiable information, so do what you will with that. But this is something that Neighborhood Watch puts out for you guys to fill out, and like your block captain has it, so in the event of a critical incident within your neighborhood, you guys can activate some sort of call tree and know where people live. Slide. This is a picture of a grid paper, neighborhood block map, and where they have different houses on, this is whatever street. Bobby lives here, Susie lives there, and this is so that everybody can have this information should something happen. So let's say like when Snowvid happened, or there's a massive incident within our city, we know who lives on our street. It's another example. Example of a call tree. Military and police and fire use this. I'm sure Public Works has a version of it also, where we can start making phone calls if something happens to get information out there faster within your communities. Okay, signage. Everybody's aware of the, I think, white and orange sign with the shadowy guy, Neighborhood Watch. Everybody's seen that. This is the one that we in the Cibolo PD have chosen. The reason why is because that orange and yellow one isn't customizable. This one is, and if you take a look, go ahead, slide. We've customized it to us so that everybody knows, one, you're in Cibolo, and that number that nobody knew is right there. 210-619-1274. You were correct, sir. 210 and some digits right after. You got the right answer. So we can customize it to fit our needs, because that right there is the non-emergent number. If it is an emergency, somebody's on fire, something's happening, 911. But that is to Shirts Dispatch, which we share. And that is, like I said, that's a sign that we've chosen. Slide. Go back. That's it. As like I said, it is not for free. I believe the cost is $30 a sign. We can buy them in bulk though, and there is a cost because Public Works is the one that has to set that up, and there will be a cost either directly to you or indirectly in the form that Public Works still has to do that, and we have to pay those workers to go install those signs. So there is a process, and Mr. Foose would be happy to talk about the installation of signs more than I would, but it would be our Public Works people doing that. As I said, you as the organization has to be prepared to take on those costs because the HOA is not going to do it. Nothing wrong with the HOAs though. This is a video of one of our supplemental programs that we offer. All right, we're just going to skip that. I'll just talk about it. So what we have is we have Operation ID. It is a program that is run through the Civil Police Department. There is a electronic way of tracking your items, your personal items. A lot of items that we have part number and serial number, and we can create a database because when people get there it is right there. When people get your items stolen from you, do you have all the part number and serial numbers of everything that you own? Probably not. So that makes it easier for us that should, if we recover stolen items, we can look up those numbers and see if they're in our database, and that can get your 120-inch screen TV back to you. I can get your Picasso, I don't know about Picasso. It doesn't have a point. I don't know why I picked that because it doesn't have a serial number anyways. But we can get your items back to you. So we do have this program, it's called Operation ID, where we can catalog items that are important to you. Mainly it's going to be like guns, laptops, things that are traceable, things that could possibly end up in a pawn shop. And it would make it easier for us to, like I said, get those items back to you. All right, go ahead, slide. Next slide. This is the 9 p.m. routine. It's a really good video, but unfortunately we can't hear it, so we're just going to skip right over it, but I think I gave you enough information about the 9 p.m. routine.
You can narrate.
They are on our YouTube channel. We do have what is called the out-of-town house check. So if you are going on vacation or you're just leaving out of town for some period of time, you can register your house with the Civil PD from, say, I'm going to be out of town from this date to this date, and an officer is going to go, and we're not going to go feed your fish and your cat, and I'm not going to go water your lawn, but I will drive up, and I will look at your house, and I will see if there's any signs of forced entry, if there's anything that's out of the ordinary, and we'll just periodically go check in your house. We post a check on it twice in a shift, so once in the daytime, once at night. That's also dependent upon call volume, but your house is registered with us and we will go check on it. I'm not going to enter the backyard unless I don't have to. I will peek over the fence, kind of go through. There are Fourth Amendment issues involved with that. Even if you say, yes, I want you to go back in, there's also liability that's involved with that if I go into your backyard. But like I said, we will go and we will check your house, and that's a program that we run. But if you're involved in your community, they'll already know because they know you personally, right? Hey, I'm going, hey, she's just gone out of town. Okay, residential security. We do have currently one officer that is what's called a crime prevention specialist. I hope to get my certification soon, and that's us being able to go out to your house, take a look around, and identify weaknesses within your home. How many of you knew that your front door needs to have at least 2.5-inch wood screws into the frame? You knew? Okay. As soon as I found out, I went and checked my door frame. What did I find? Not a 2.5-inch screw. Did not find that, so I went and quickly changed those out. So we're going to look for things like that. Like I said, I am not a crime prevention specialist. I found that out just talking out to my partner, and there's other things that you can do to harden your house to make it a harder target for thieves to break in. As I said, never underestimate the value of human laziness, because if they come and it's harder to get in, they're just going to go to the next house. And so hopefully within your communities, you guys have hardened your homes and made it harder for thieves to break in and take what belongs to us. And it is possible, depending upon, I'm not going to promise, but it's possible, depending upon your homeowner's insurance, that you can get some sort of discount. No promises. Homeowner discount. Go ahead, skip that one. It's in there twice for some reason. Okay. Our role. So I've talked about your role. Is everyone clear on what your role is? Like I said, I'm very interactive. Ma'am in the red shirt, are you clear on what your role is as a neighborhood watch? Are you clear on what your role is as a neighborhood watch person? Take notes? What is your role in the neighborhood watch program? Watch out for your neighbors. What is our role? Our role is to provide that support, to come out, to provide that education, to talk about your issues, to take those back to command staff, and to see if we can come to a resolution. I will tell you right now, we cannot be everything to everybody, nor will we try. But as I said, we are a community policing organization, and it is us working with you for the betterment of our community. And that is how we do it. I know the way it was done in the past, and we learned a lot of hard lessons. Police is an ever-evolving career field. I'm very proud of it. I love it. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm talking to you people today. And I hope that we can work together. Our community is only growing. There is what I like to call the 1% in our community. Anybody know what that 1% is? No. No. What I refer, you guys can't read my mind. So what I refer to the 1%, that is that element within our city not doing good things. So as our city grows, so does that proverbial 1%. 99% of the people within the city of Cibolo are doing good. And most of the crimes that are happening in our Cibolo are out-of-towners coming in, stealing, and then going back. That's that 1%. But as we grow, as our city gets bigger, the big city crime comes with it. So we want to work with you guys, as I said, and let's get those neighborhood watch programs started. Okay, so we talked about what it is, talked about possible benefits, possible deterrence of crime, how to get it started, some paperwork that you may or may not want to be involved in, signage and why we chose that particular sign and the associated cost with it, supplemental programs such as the Operation ID, the out-of-house checks, and the 9 p.m. routine, and what our role is as a city of Cibolo. Cibolo Police Department, excuse me. Slide. Because we are one of the safest cities in the state of Texas. We want to keep it that way. We work hard in this community to make it what it is. Let's keep going in that direction, and let's keep going in that direction by all of our community outreach programs. Be a part of the Citizens Police Academy. Come to our Coffee with a Cop. Come out and engage your police officers, because as I tell the police officers within the police department, you do not want to meet your residents on their worst day. When an incident has happened, it is up to you as the police officer to know your residents before that time. So I'm asking you as the residents, we're already in the community. We're already doing things. So now I'm asking you to come and meet your police officers, because you don't want to meet your police officer on your worst day. Make sure you have those relationships, because we definitely want them with you. Because in the end, it's all of us together. We look out for each other. We got through COVID. We got through Snowvid. What's coming next? What's coming next? And let's make sure that we have those, that we foster those positive community partnerships, because we don't want them when it's too late. Anybody have any questions for me? Good, because I will see you when? Tuesday, 6 o'clock at a neighborhood near you. Anybody have anything else? Chief?
No, we look forward to getting out and seeing you all on Tuesday. I think we got a hand coming up. Look, Neighborhood Watch, I know there's costs associated with it. I can only tell you, it is the probably premier police community relation program at keeping our community safe. We can't do it alone. Crime is not the police department's responsibility to solve crime. We do not expect you to get out and go and be the police, but we need your eyes and ears acting in concert with the police department. How will your eyes and ears act in concert? Neighborhood watch. That allows us to do that. And what I can assure you is our officers will be coming to you, will be engaged with you. Yes, where we report and put crime and things on our website, but there's a lot more that we can talk about. And I don't think it has to be about crime, right? It's about celebrating, it's about talking about what we do, it's about being a part of our Citizens Police Academy, right? As we continue to grow and build relationships with youth in our community, we want to be a resource to you. We know that we're a 24-hour resource, and you see us out here, and I can't ask and answer questions about public works, but even through neighborhood watch groups, sometimes we have the opportunity to point you in the right direction of even where city services is, county services, etc. So it's a partnership. It's one that's very important to me. I'm going to be coming around and really, really asking you all to see if we can build on this, because I know it works.
All righty, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your time.
Do we have a question? I saw one hand briefly come up. Okay. All right. Thank you all. Thank you for coming out. Hopefully the workshop series was that as we build on. I know we had the flock presentation. Those things came out. Look, for me, I want to give you all a round of applause for taking time out of your day to come and work with us and keep our community safe. So thank you.
Do you have another section? Or? Okay. I think we got one more thing to talk about on the social media and your neighborhood newsletters and things like that that Brady's got. So, and then we get out of here on time. You guys do your PowerPoint.
All right, I'm going to try to get us out of here on time at 2 p.m. Let's talk about social media. So, show of hands real quick. How many of you have an official Facebook application or official social media application for your HOA? Anyone? Okay. How many unofficial Facebook applications are out there? Okay. How many of you sometimes struggle with content being posted on Nextdoor about your community that's maybe not accurate, maybe misleading, or even worse, maybe vitriol? Yeah, so hopefully what we'll talk about here for the next 30 minutes will kind of help you figure out how to navigate that. The old legal opinion on social media was, don't touch it, stay away from it, you can't control it, nothing good can come of it. HOA boards stay away from social media, but very quickly I realized that was not practical. Over time I realized social media is here to stay, and there's a Will Rogers quote that's prudent here: even if you're on the right track, if you stand still, you'll get run over. And that's what I was seeing in my communities as it relates mostly to these unofficial social media applications. So, any of you that are looking to adopt an official social media application for your community, there's a right way and a wrong way. I saw several communities just create a Facebook page, no real idea or thought as to what exactly we wanted it to do, no social media policy, we didn't decide the purpose, and next thing you know, the board is coming to me going, we have this social media page, the content's out of control, we don't know what to do, we feel like it's dragging our community spirit down, and even worse, perhaps our property values. So the first thing you want to do if you're going to set up an official Facebook or social media application, let's decide what we want it to do. Are we going to push out information, receive information? Are we trying to foster communication between our members? Can be real basic, real broad at the same time, in terms of deciding what you want that social media to achieve. Foster communication among our members to improve the membership experience. Think of it like a mission statement. once you decide what its purpose is, that allows you to limit the content on that page to what's consistent with your purpose. And that's where a lot of associations went wrong. They never really decided what they wanted content-wise on the page, and they just thought everybody would do the right thing. And I'm sure there's no shortage of stories in the audience from how things can spin out of control on social media. Definitely want to adopt a social media policy. This is a governing document that allows you to control the content. I hear it all the time. You can't tell me what I can say on Facebook. I have free speech rights. Sure, on your Facebook page, but on the association's Facebook page, we do have some controls, and we should have some controls as it relates to that content. I don't want this to sound like I want you to silence every dissenter or silence every opinion that disagrees with the board, but you know what I'm talking about, the things that are not good for your community, that don't foster good community spirit, and maybe not even about your community. The social media policy gives you that enforcement tool to control that content and remove content if it violates the policy. You know, no foul language, no personal attacks, no character assassinations, no calling neighbors out. You know, what positive information about the community is what we want. And then ultimately perhaps blocking the user if they continue to violate the policy. A common experience or a common question I receive is in relation to defamation of character. Somebody posts something on an unofficial page, and a board member or even maybe a resident will say, it's defamatory. I want a cease and desist sent. I want you to go after them, Brady. The reality is that defamation of character cause of action is not one held in the name of the association. That defamation of character allegation or cause of action would be held by that individual director or that individual resident. So it's going to be something that the HOA really would not pursue, even if someone was posting defamatory content on a social media page. I don't want to leave you with the idea that there's nothing the HOA can do. Let's kind of hypothetically consider that someone is defaming a board member on an unofficial Facebook page. I still feel comfortable sending that author of that defamatory content a letter. I just need the board to understand that I can't take it all the way to the lawsuit to pursue that defamation cause of action. Defamation is actually pretty hard to prove. Defamation's attacking someone's character in the public setting, and more often than not, the authors of this content know exactly where the line is. They may say something along the lines of, our assessments are going up this year. The board president just went to Fiji. I wonder how the board president paid for that trip. You know what the suggestion is. You know what the conclusion is that that author wants us to come to, but that's actually not defamatory. Just asking questions, expecting the reader of those questions to come to a conclusion that assassinates the character of the board president. Obvious defamatory content is, our assessments have gone up, our board president went to Fiji, I bet our board president took the assessment dollars to pay for his trip to Fiji. That's more direct and probably an obvious example of defamation. Most people don't cross the line. Most people dance right on that line. And I can say 99% of the time when someone brings something to me and says, Brady, I'm being defamed, my character is being attacked here, it doesn't rise to the level of that. So your most common experience, sorry. Okay. But what should we do here when it comes to the unofficial page? You know there's content out there. It is about the community. Maybe you're seeing the community get stirred up a little bit. You as board members are getting asked questions about what's going on. I call this the indirect response. Because what I have found in my experience is if you directly engage, that feeds something psychological in the poster of that negative content. So it's better not to directly engage with whomever's posting that negative content. And the example I'll kind of give you here is, let's say it's your landscaping contract for your community, and let's say it's a 6-figure contract. It's a big ticket item, big budget item. Some real world examples of content that I've seen on an unofficial page. The board is entering into a landscape contract. It's going to cost our community $180,000. The homeowners didn't even get a vote on this, and one of the board members has a business interest in this landscaping company. So the way I would deal with that specific circumstance, I wouldn't post directly responding to that content, because that, like I said, it just feeds something inside the author there. What I would recommend in using that exact hypothetical is this indirect response. Very matter of fact, we understand our community has questions about our landscape contract. There's a lot of bad information out there. Know that that Facebook application is not an official source of information. Here are the facts. Pursuant to bylaw provision X, the board is authorized to enter into contracts for our community. No one on the board has a financial interest in this landscape company. And here are the things per our governing documents and the law that homeowners are permitted to vote on. Elections, amending the governing documents, and the 2 or 3 other things. And close it with, if you want official information about our community, here's where you go. Here's our website. Here's our official Facebook page, if you have one. Come to a meeting. Whatever your official sources of information are, direct the community there. And that's usually the best kind of overarching strategy in these circumstances. Instead of trying to control the content over here on that unofficial page, just remind the people where they can go to get true, accurate, official information. It's not a one and done endeavor. You're going to have to do it over and over again, but your goal is not to change the mind of the naysayers over here as much as it is to tell people where they need to go for the correct information. Remind everyone to investigate and verify information before posting. Sometimes that's helpful. If you think it's prudent, based on the circumstances, let people know that posts about character could potentially lead to litigation. Some of the content I've seen on these unofficial pages is so close to defamation that I think it's fair to tell people, hey, probably shouldn't be attacking anybody's character publicly, even if it is true, but you just shouldn't do it anyway, because if it potentially is not true, then that's a subject of litigation potentially. And certainly it's not productive for the community. What I see in the worst of circumstances, and I don't want to jump ahead too much here, but what will often happen in a community where there's a fairly contentious dispute going on, you got a Hatfield and a McCoy situation, and call me a sap, but I think people should enjoy where they live. They should enjoy living there. There's a certain value to community spirit. We don't talk about it. I think my opinion is, at least in the industry, we don't talk about it as much as we should. But the value of community spirit is something that's very hard to measure, but you sure as heck know when you don't have it. I can tell you that much. And I've navigated enough of these community disputes where it can take a community years to recover if you've got a Hatfield and McCoy situation going on. I know I got a little soapboxy there, but we kind of dial it back. But the idea is to help you stop from getting to that point. And some of this speech, some of this content, I actually will speak not just to directors, but to homeowners, some of which that are responsible for posting this content on social media, about the negative effects it has on the community experience. So the most likely experience for you is not going to involve defamation. That's 1% of the time, but it could call into the question the board, the manager, the management company. Spending, decision-making for any of the board members, it's not a matter of if someone questions your decision, it's when are they going to question your decision. That's inevitable. Stirring up the community, drain on resources, and fostering doubt. There's very much a measurable cost to that negative content, but there's also a hidden cost. The hidden cost is to the extent that your board or you as board members are dealing with that negative content, you're not doing something else. You're not paying attention to that landscaping project that you've been meaning to get to. You're not paying attention to that detention pond maintenance that may be necessary. You're not paying attention to whatever it may be that is the typical day-to-day operations of your community. You're devoting resources toward dealing with this unofficial Facebook page. And I'll point that out to communities where I see potentially some of this stuff coming. So I've touched on this a little bit, reminding the membership of where the official sources of communication and information are. Invite people to attend a meeting. I attended 2 meetings in 1 week, not last week, but week prior, and the reason I was there was to kind of deal with what we thought was going to be uproars at both of those communities, all of which started on Facebook. An author of content got the community all stirred up. In both instances, 40, 50 homeowners showed up, and the author of that content in both of those meetings, the authors did not show up to the meeting. So there's a certain personality, maybe pathology is the right word, of someone who gets behind a keyboard, throws out, almost defamatory statements, gets everybody's mind going, yeah, where is our money going? He's right. And then doesn't show up to the actual meeting. And so I've seen that experience over and over again. It just happened recently, 2 days apart, 2 meetings that were 2 days apart from one another. But so I often will tell my board members, don't be afraid, stay the course, be transparent, keep doing what you know is right, and everything else will kind of take care of itself. Don't worry so much about the keyboard warriors. They are what they are. And most of your members will actually come to your defense, or most of your members want to know where the truth is, and they will orient themselves toward the truth. So as long as your path involves the truth, then everything else kind of falls into place afterwards. Recognizing new members in a meeting. I know this one seems a little bit out of place, but the story I tell here involves what was about to become a community dispute. We had a 2.5, almost 3-hour meeting where you had a division in the board, which translated to a division in the community. And notwithstanding my best efforts to moderate the meeting, it was an intense meeting. It was contentious. But at the end of it, someone stood up at the end of the owner forum and said, "Hi, my name's Susie. I just moved to this community a week ago. If I would have known that this community was like this, I would have bought a house somewhere else," and left. And everyone in the room was like, ugh. We didn't know Susie was here. We didn't know she was new. So the point or the lesson from that is know who's in the room with you. It'd probably be good for you to say, do we have any new members in our meeting tonight? And if someone stands up, introduce, welcome them. Do you have everything you need? And it honestly, it starts the meeting off in a more positive way, even if you know that there's something contentious on your agenda that's going to get people in the Hatfield and the McCoy mindset. So watch out for that one. If you try to control the content on the unofficial page, it could backfire on you. that's kind of what they want. The more you tell them not to do it, the more it feeds into something that suggests to them that they're on to something. They're telling me no because I'm getting close to the truth. It's not that fancy, I promise. So just be careful when you try to silence the naysayers. Trust your membership to verify information. Most of these sites or these pages are too emotionally charged. You've seen it. All caps, lots of exclamation points, poor grammar, no punctuation. Paragraph 1 of the post, man, it hooks you. Yeah, what is the board doing with that money? What's going on here? Paragraph 15, you want to take a nap. That's what I see over and over again. So that's why I tell my board members, don't worry so much about some of this content, because what ultimately happens over time is people get tired of it. The parallel I draw for you is like a car wreck on the freeway. Everyone kind of slows down to see what's going on, and then they realize, oh, I got to get to work, or I got to pick up the kids from school. I've got to get back to my life. Same thing happens with some of these community disputes that play out on social media. Board members, stay the course. Time is your friend. I know it's easy for me to say that from where I sit. I'm not in your community. I don't live there. And they're not talking about me. But time and time again, for years and years, I've kind of seen this play out. And what ultimately happens, even if that naysaying group gets some backing, I've seen these groups get to 50, 60 people. It's really usually just about 3 to 6 that are part of that naysaying content. So once it hits a critical mass, people start to get tired and they fall off. They get back to their life. You know, they hit the gas and pass up that wreck on the freeway and get to work, go pick up the kids. And then it's down to that original 3 to 6. So here's a cautionary tale, yet another cautionary tale from a lawyer. I think that's why people love us so much. We're always telling you cautionary tales. But this is an experience with a board where, notwithstanding my advice to them not to directly engage with the group, they said, we appreciate your advice, Brady, but please engage. And because they really didn't like what this naysaying group was saying about them. This tit for tat went on for about a year. For every post that the naysaying group put out, the board had a response. Every response from the board, there was a reply from the naysaying group, and so on and so forth for a year. The board would send me the post from the naysaying group. I would draft, they would draft the response, the board would draft a response. I would look at it, completely gut it. They would get upset with me because I gutted their response. And we would meet somewhere in the middle. We would post, and they'd say, now we're done. Nope. The group would come back and post something else. The community wants us to respond, Brady. The people that are behind us want us to respond, was the battle cry to me. The attorney fees were upwards of $35,000, $40,000 for that year, because that became all I did for them, was help them navigate that dispute. I talked to my board president every couple of days, sometimes on weekends. Because the naysayers figured out that if they posted something on Friday evening, probably wasn't going to be until Monday or even Tuesday that we were able to get to it and deal with it. So they figured that out pretty quickly. There was a lawsuit that was filed. They tried to remove the entire board. Everyone. We just want all the board members out. There was a special petition to call a special meeting to remove the board. Multiple community meetings. They were all pretty contentious. This is a neighborhood of around 800, 900 lots. So we had 250 to 300 people at every meeting because everyone was stirred up. The media, we were at the local VFW hall, and the media saw a bunch of cars at the VFW hall. They pulled over to see what was going on and said, "Oh my God, we've got a story here." And although we wouldn't let them in the meeting because it was reserved solely for the membership, the parking lot was certainly available for the media to interview people that came out of the meeting. What is this about? These HOA board members. So my president had a heart attack in the middle of all this. And at some point he said, "Brady, my wife is telling me it's her or the HOA. I've got to make a choice here." And so this thing became all the community did for a year. This is like an absolute worst case scenario. This has only ever happened once in my entire career. Again, a cautionary tale for how to do things, for how not to do things. But the important thing to gather from a lot of this is this was all went from the boundaries of the community outside. So this was in a rural-ish area of Conroe, between just north of Houston. But it wasn't very long before everybody around there knew what was going on in ABC community. A lot of people asked me, well, who won at the end of it all? Who won? Who won the lawsuit? Who ultimately prevailed? Was it the board or was it the naysayers? My answer was nobody. Everybody lost. At the end of it all, what we started to see from the members was the community was tired. They didn't care whether the board was right or whether the naysayers were right. They just wanted everyone to get along and get back to what the community was before this battle had engaged. And so there's definitely a negative effect on property values there. So to the extent that realtors and brokers are aware of what's going on in a community, and they know it may not be the best place to live, or people may not enjoy living there, they're going to steer their clients somewhere else to different communities, and that ultimately does have an effect on property values. So none of this is intended to thwart anyone's ability to express an opinion. And I say this to the naysaying groups, I say this to board members, communities as a whole. Not everybody is going to agree on everything always, and that's okay. But what's important to keep in the forefront of thinking is this civil discourse, yes. Because if it's not, then very easily a community can kind of take the turn and go the wrong way. And ultimately that affects property values. And the other thing that I will tell groups is, the more the content is negatively slanted, the more my phone is going to ring and the more my emails are going to ping. And you don't want the guy with the suit showing up to every meeting, because that means you're spending money. So if it's one thing that most communities, all of them will agree on, is they don't want to give any more money to lawyers than they absolutely have to. And so usually that kind of starts to unite everyone a little bit. Like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't be fighting so much because we don't want Brady here at every meeting. And usually that will help kind of the community focus in the correct direction. So essentially the takeaway here, and what I'll close on is there's a right way and a wrong way to use social media. And if you're going to set up a social media application, again, I'm not saying you have to, but if you choose to set up a social media application for your community, make sure you do it in such a way that you can control the content, but still allow opinions to be exchanged even if they don't align with your own. As it relates to these unofficial pages, a lot of it depends on what the specific content is on those unofficial pages, but there is a strategy, there is a playbook. A lot of what I presented in here today is proven and time-tested over and over and over again. And so the idea is really to educate your community members on where they need to go for correct information. As we've kind of touched on just broadly here today, average citizens don't always know exactly where they need to go for the information that they're looking for. The city gets calls for HOA issues. The HOA gets calls for city issues. But the same logic exists as it relates to social media. Someone sees ABC Community Facebook page, by golly, that's where I get official information for ABC Community. That may not be true. The same kind of thinking exists for Nextdoor, same kind of thinking exists any social media application that, quote, looks like something that's official HOA communication. So, any questions on social media, communication in general? We've got 1 minute left. Did it. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Big thank you to the city of Cibolo. Again, not every city does this, so definitely tipping my hat to all your local officials here, council members, for sure. I attend a lot of meetings for a lot of communities, and it is rare to have this much local government involvement directly with communities. So Cibolo is doing something right, folks. Thanks for your attention today.
So I just wanted to, I'm on board now. I've got the board now, so I just wanted to yeah. Yeah. Yeah.